Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the D and WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the movie of what if Deku became even more protective and supportive of Uraraka. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Endeavor sent the three boys to a small task, an abandoned sketchy warehouse. Deku and Todoroki both felt it could just be drug addicts that claimed the place but kept their eyes open. Bakugo took the chance as a villain would want it to seem that way, going way ahead of them instead of the better option and finding a more secluded way to invade. The hell? Bakugo blasted the doors down to a dark empty building. There's no one here. If anything, it was more of a dainty greenhouse. Only thing he didn't understand is these plants seemed healthy but there's no window, no glass walls to ensure them any sun or rain. He went by pulling on a leaf and heard Midoriya's sudden shout. Wait, Kaken. Bakugo, this stuff could be poisonous, Todoroki warned. TCH. The blonde rolled his eyes and let go of the greenery. Looking back into it, it looked as if it purred, and that's where Bakugo's face was swarmed by strong particles. It stung a little but not enough for him to not already get revenge on the plant. He blasted the table with his hands, screaming in anger. Kaken, wait. We should call Endeavor and let him know what's happened. Maybe this place is up to something, so we won't want to ruin all of it. Todoroki nodded as he alerted his father. Bakugo left to find a nearby pond or puddle anywhere to wash out his eyes. It seemed to help the sting, but his vision was still blurry. Endeavor and the police shown up, taking the plants back for further investigation. You all right, Kaken? Deku brought him a water bottle. TCH. Bakugo snatched it. Better than any of you will ever be. Funny you say that, but you still seem to be scratching your eyes. Todoroki flatly sasses. He growled lowly but knew he was right. Something was off and he'd pay for his ignorance. Fine, I'll get checked out. Nerd's happy. He stomped off doing exactly that, and the pair both just shrugged and at least thankful he wouldn't pretend to be Superman and think nothing could faze him. Well, Mr. Bakugo, those drops should help. I gave you some sleeping medication, so get home and rest up. Use the drops 3 times a day and call me if anything worsens. Once labs inform me more on the plant itself, I'll get in touch with you. The doctor informed as she wrote down more things on her clipboard. Whatever, he mumbled. A pinch of worry did come over him. His work was his happiness, his goal. He had hoped nothing he did earlier changed that. Finally home at last. He found the elevators fast, considering he felt he could almost pass out around the steps. A small hand stopped the door from shutting all the way as she popped in. Room for one more. She was still in her hero suit. Looked like she's been under some rubble. You look like hell, Cheeks, leaning against the wall, barely giving her a glance. She giggles. I know. Today was amazing. Stopped a trio of villains today. She beamed with excitement. Damn, that's amazing. Congrats. You did your job. He crossed his arms, pretending to be uninterested. Yeah, I know it's my job, but still, I just hate I had to walk home in my suit. I had to stay over and talk to police, so I didn't make it back to the agency in time to wash up. Bakugo said nothing. The man was tired and almost fell asleep. Second floor. Damn, why did this thing take so long? One thing I will change is how men treat me though. Not like a girl doesn't want male attention sometimes, but being catcalled all the way home is so gross. She huffed. TCH. Yeah, well, when we can see every detail of your body, it's a little hard to hold back. Angel face. He blurted carelessly. She was a little stunned at the blunt reply. She didn't expect any, and maybe she said it to the wrong person. The guy. But did he think that way too? She looked down, noting it was tight, but she didn't think her classmates noticed it like that. I didn't realize you guys felt that way. Her cheeks were flustered and she was beyond embarrassed. There's not a conversation that goes on about chicks and who do who and whatever those extras say that you're not part of. She dropped her jaw, completely stunned at this odd and uneventful information. Can't say I blame them, he added, looking down at her curves, the way her ass popped above her thick thighs. She felt his eyes on her and didn't know how to really feel about it. Bakugo was hot, but this was different from how he usually is. The ding went off and the doors slid open. Bakugo yawned and walked down the hall, as if he said nothing, like he didn't just spill some of the secrets of what guys talk about and how he felt. She watched him go through the boys' hall, and she hurriedly found her way out of the elevator before they closed on her. She picked her out some clothing and found the bath immediately, resting in its soaking warm temperatures. Bakugo collapsed on his bed after tossing his drops on his desk. The man was barely knowledgeable of where he was, let alone what he just said. He had no reason to feel or think he was acting out of sorts. Uraraka settled into the hot water. Even the familiar sounds of Tsu, Jiru, and Toru didn't wake her from her relaxed daze. It's when they joined in did she sit up. Hi, guys. Hey, Choco. I see you have the same idea as us, Tsu mentioned. Yeah, I needed it. Uraraka sighed as her arms rested on the back of the tub. Yeah, Mirko had me going so hard today. I knew she was fierce, but I didn't realize how intense her streets were. Toru whined. I love it. It's hard because it's important and I like knowing I got a challenge. Jiro adds, I know what you mean. Ochako replied, letting the water soak into her hair. Hey, do you guys think the boys ever talk about us? Like who'd they date and stuff? Jiro cringed. Hey, probably. They're gross like that. Yeah, but it's totally cute. I wonder if anyone chose me. Toru prayed. It would have to be a person of true morals, considering you aren't visible so your looks wouldn't be important to them. Hiro, Sue informed and encouraged with her finger on her chin. Why so interested? Jiro lays her arms over the edge. I don't know. Bakugo kinda mentioned something and it was weird coming from him, so I don't know, I guess it was kinda interesting to think about. The girl's eyes widened. Bakugo, yeah, she nods. Crazy right. Spill, Chaco. Toru spashed a little, scooting closer to Uravity. Yeah, you already gave us half, we really ought to know the rest. Kyoka supports Toru's idea. Achako chuckled. I mean, it's nothing really. When I was in the elevator with him, he just had a different vibe with him somewhat. Like when you're under anesthesia and tell a little too much information. Which is? She sighed. She supposed it wasn't harmful. She explained all that happened in the elevator. I think Bakugo has a crush. Toru giggles. Yuck. Jiro left her tongue out. Oh no, Toru. I think he was just tired and probably tried to get a rise out of me. Ochako blushed, letting sprinkles of water splash from her hands, waving. Perhaps. Bakugo is the type to push people where he thinks he could affect them, but it also sounds nothing like him at the same time. I think he'd use another way if he wanted to, and honestly Bakugo doesn't go through hazing unless it's important. Sue added correctly. What do you mean? Toru confused. That although Bakugo is helplessly idiotic, he wouldn't exactly flirt or use that card on anyone, let alone classmates. I think he would feel shame to his heels and probably start gagging. Jiro adds. Ochako couldn't help but feel a little shitty. It's not that she found herself unattractive or even hot, but Bakugo really was. Whenever he wouldn't talk, that is. But she supposed her friends were right. He was tired and probably worked hard, as he was probably one of the most who worked hard with Deku and Todoroki all day. Bakugo's dream was consistent. He slept hard, so tossing and turning wasn't the problem. More or less like a dream he couldn't nor wanted to escape. They both were in their hero gear. She was soaked from the rain as they were sheltered, sliding off her suit while turned around, noticing the scars and wondering if those were the ones he'd caused, making him harder. The dream repeated like that over and over. Kakin, Kakin. Her voice whimpered repeatedly. Then suddenly her tone changed and reality was summoning him again. Kakin, you wake yet? A familiar annoying voice replaced the teasing one. The blonde's eye crept open slowly to see a little too close smile near him. Deku, he griped, digging his fingers into the pillow. He stood on his haunches, careful to not expose his own boner from his dream. He didn't need the nerd going telling everyone. Sorry, I was just asked to come check on you, and well, it's morning. You've slept late. It's almost 9 in the morning. He gasped sharply, lifting up his watch from his nightstand. Shit, again. Sorry for barging in. I'll let Mr. Aizawa know you're okay. Deku nervously walked to the door. Thanks, Bakugo muttered. Huh, nothing. Bakugo tossed his watch back on the furniture, glancing down at his boner as he is alone now. He didn't have to remember what he dreamt. It still was a clear picture. He was a guy. It wasn't foreign to get hard in his sleep, but damn, this was probably more aggressive than any others he may have had. Bakugo was lifting as Kirishima popped up beside him. Remember, bro, don't break too much sweat. Still got that hike this afternoon. Hike? Yeah, remember us in Class 1B are gonna go hiking later. Supposed to be kind of a challenge thing. No doubt Manama had his hand in it. Little shit irritates me. Kirishima grimaced. Shit, I forgot. Bakugo didn't feel like it, honestly. He was still dealing with unwanted sensations and feelings, let alone a creeping worry of any updates on that plan. Don't tell me you're backing out. Katsuki growled. Who said I was? Kirishima held his hands in defense. Yep, too easy. The bus being loaded and Kirishima sat next to Bakugo. Unfortunately, that meant Sparky was going to stand up on his knees again, hovering over his own seat, yapping with probably his mouth open while he eats on whatever trash he snacks on. Let's go, Ashido. You've kept us waiting long enough. You too, Uraraka. Aizawa annoyingly patrolled his hand for the girls to enter already. Mina and Uraraka now entering the bus. Sorry, Aizawa-sensei. Mina offered a half-hearted apology and he waves his hand for her to keep moving. No, she didn't. She didn't wear skimpy shorts that made her ass look bigger, which he couldn't tell exactly from the front, but the way they fit around her thighs was all too good. He assumed it was better when she turned around. Look who graced us with her presence. Kaminari poked. Mina looked back before placing a middle finger at the blonde annoyance. Ew. The moment Uraraka's thighs passed Bakugo's face had him digging his nails into his knees. It's as if he was a predator. And the smell of her was more taunting. He was being trapped. Why did she smell so good? Look so good? He didn't notice things this bad. He was a guy, but he didn't give two damns if a woman was wearing panties underneath booty shorts. You good, bro? Kiri nudged him. bringing him back to his reality before his mind convinced him to walk back there and claim her. He nodded, shoving his headband above, letting his skin cool down some. Kirishima offered him jerky, and although he would check the carbs first, right now he needed something to bite into that wouldn't whimper. So, Mina nudged her. I heard Bakugo checked you out the other day. How did that feel, knowing you're the first victim he's looked at like that? Ochako blushed and hid her cheeks. It's not like that. Seriously, he's not even looked at me today, so I think he probably was tired and didn't mean it that way. PFT, baby, he's a man. They definitely think that way. Mina popped out her compact mirror as she tweezed her brows. Ochako shrugged, looking out the window the entire time. She didn't think of Bakugo the whole way, but she noticed how he looked. He had an orange headband below his hairline. She imagined his hair out of his face made him even more cute. His shorts weren't snug, but they made his thighs look so strong. His biceps, of course, are even bigger than last year. She couldn't help but wear something like this. She had to know if he was tired and out of it. Or maybe he actually liked her body despite how he acts sometimes. The bus stopped, and finally all the Class 1A and 1B students collide and communicate. Other than Tetsu and Kirishima's challenging words being traded, Monoma pretended it was too silly of a task and far too easy, and his class would be the obvious winner. You'd think these dumb shits would know it's only to get us out and keep us moving. If there's no prize at the end, it's not a contest. Bakugo mumbled out of annoyance. Oh come on, sourpuss, lighten up. Kami smacked the back of Bakugo, quickly regretting it. Wait, he cried out as Bakugo pulled him by his hair and threw him across where he landed toward the girls. Hello, ladies. He stood up, dusting himself off. Pissing of Bakugo again. Ochako tilted her head. In my defense, he was born that way. They shrugged and nodded. Man needs to get his dick-ass Jiru's earphone string wrapped around his neck, tightening to shut him up. Serves you right. Mina chuckled as they noticed two of the either class students approach them. Kosei Tsuburaba and Sen Kaibara. Hi, you're Uraraka, right? Kaibara asks. Yeah, you're the guy who you kinda carried and saved. I never got to say thanks. He titled his head in an awkward way. Don't mention it. We were all under attack and needed one another. She held her fists against her chest. That's true. He blushed a little. So you gonna tell us your names, or do we make up what we got in mind? Mina asks, ripping the awkward bandage off. Oh, sorry, Kaibara nervously scratched. He's Kaibara, and you can call me Kosei. The other boy spoke up. He was a bit more blunt than his nervous friend. Mina got the feeling he was a little more interested in Uraraka than really talking to her. She supposed she couldn't blame them. She was looking super luscious in her shorts. The trail began, and they began their walk accordingly, enjoying the greenery, sounds of a pond, and the wind blowing through at times. Bakugo was usually in front, but he was distracted. The image of a certain plump ass in shorts kept him bound. It's not he didn't want to be number one to finish this, but he was only in a world where Uraraka's ass was his leader. See something you like? Monoma spoke beside the blonde, annoying him already. Oh, don't stop on my account. It's completely natural. A guy like you would probably be interested in a woman who almost bested him. He growled. Almost. It was true, but still a sting. No one should come close to him. Not Deku, not half and half, and not Ura. His thinking cut short as he noticed the guy walking beside her continued to brush his hand around hers. That sneaky bitch. He was trying to find a way to touch her. Bakugo probably would noticed before and been disgusted, but never had he imagined feeling jealousy. And as if someone came on his own property and propped up a chair. Uraraka wasn't his. He didn't want her. He didn't want anyone. You know, if you like that music, I know a place that plays it. Has the best ramen too. The man beside her was overheard saying. Bakugo had enough. He quickened his pace, shoving into the man talking, towering over him as he lied there. The hell you taking your time for? Trying to make your class lose? Extra? His scowl was sharp, but his words weren't so loud, but mostly come from a sour tone. Bakugo, you're so rude. Let's just enjoy the walk. Ochako mentioned. He scowled at her like it was a betrayal. He growled and picked up his pace, walking ahead, finding his spot beside Kirishima. I was wondering where you been, Kiri asked, airing out his Airflex tank. To ch. His lip pulled into annoyed snarl as he don't plan on talking. Damn Uraraka, he mumbled lowly. What? Why did she get mad? You say something towards Midoriya? Well, no. He's back there somewhere, like I give a damn anyway. Bakugo gripes. Oh, well, why are you mad at her then? To ch. Bakugo wasn't going to say anything really. But he's not entirely in control of himself as of late. Such a tease. A tease? Kiri cocked a brow. Don't act like you haven't noticed. Her suit, her little chipper attitude, the way she wears her shorts, strutting around like she owns the damn place. Let alone that creep she's talking to. Kirishima didn't hide the smile creeping on his face. Oh, I didn't realize she did all that for you. Bakugo felt a turning fire inside. I didn't say that. He blushed. No, of course not. I think she's probably just being herself. And you happen to notice. Kiri shrugged nonchalantly. To ch. Haven't noticed shit. I don't care what she does. She can talk to guys and wear those clothes. Doesn't bother me a damn." He continued to raise his voice like he was trying to convince not only himself but the trees. Hiroshima looked back, hoping they wouldn't interrogate and see him tweaking out. Now during intermission, both classes had 2 students bring provisions. Momo and Ida provide their classmates fresh water and nutrient bars. Bakugo leaned back against a tree as he ate, noticing an obviously sly Class 1B student signaling Uraraka in the secluded woods. How the hell were these people gonna be heroes if they don't see this shit? He drops his stuff and follows after. He knows she can handle herself, but he needs to see this for himself. What happens? He doesn't trust anyone, let alone the extras in that class. "Kosai, what are you doing?" "Just wanted to show you something," he said, leading her to a tree where the teams were too distant to see them. "It's just a tree." "I don't." Before she knew it, the boy pushed her against it, locking his lips into hers. She whimpered a bit before pushing him off. "The hell?" She cocked a brow. "You led me away to do this." He smirked. "I'm a romantic, I couldn't help it," shrugging before kissing her again. Bakugo found their trail, hearing Uraraka protest and him seeming to find it amusing. "Kosai, I said this isn't what I like. I just met you." She pushed him off using her quirk. "Release." He fell to the ground. "Atta girl," Bakugo praised. "Now if you don't mind, I'd like to get back to my class." "Hold up." He groaned, planning to use his own quirk before Bakugo speedily grabbed him by his neck. "What the hell's your problem, asshole? She's not attracted to you. Even if she was, gives no extra any right to push her." He threw the man. When he raised back up, he thought he wanted a battle before he saw the scowl in Bakugo's eyes. The man feasted on battle, and he didn't think he was ready for that. He fixed his shirt and ran off. After he left, Uraraka glared at Bakugo. She didn't expect him to be here. How did he know? "You didn't have to do that, you know," she mentions with a hint of concern. "TCH." He rolled his eyes walking by her. Her aroma was so enticing. Basically a trap. A trap for the likes of him. "I'm not a monster. I wouldn't watch a guy push himself on a woman who didn't like that stuff." "Who said I didn't?" Her eyes glaring into his. That's all it took. He shoved her towards the same tree, not only locking their lips but desperate to roam inside her mouth. The sun was hot and the sweat on their bodies were proof of it. He was gripping her sides where he'd leave a bruise, and his long tongue declared authority in her mouth. He broke the kiss to lick up her neck and let one hand grasp her breast. "You know, I think exposing too much skin is bad for you." He bit into her neck harshly. She placed her hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. "Bakugo." She ran her hand through his thick hair, pulling it at the immense sensation of his tongue and teeth marking her. He turned her around, keeping her neck still and bringing her hips back to arch her ass into his bulge. "See what you do. Get me all excited. You have no idea how hard I've been trying to tame it. The way I want to take you right here and make you limp all the way back." He shoved himself further against her. She hissed, feeling the bark scratch her cheek and his thick member between her closed cheeks. "I think I'll keep you bothered like this," lowering to her ear, "till you deserve it." Tossing her off of him, she whimpered, not at the pain but at the need for him. The way her mouth throbbed to be touched by him. Watching him walk back without so much as a second look was hard. She needed him. She felt so pathetic, like she was overwhelmed with need. She had to gather herself. She didn't need anyone to know she was almost in tears, needing to be ripped in half by the school's most violent student. Although the thought of no one knowing excited her. She often read Mina's books like these, stuff to keep the need to be wanted buried deep inside. So someone touching her like this only made her crave it more, especially if it Katsuki Bakugo. She'd thank every religion as it was time to return back to the bus. "Ice cream, matcha, yogurt," Achako mumbles repeatedly in a mantra. What are you doing?" Mina asks, a little nervous. She's using food as her motivation. Sue answered for her dazed-out friend. "Do I want to try?" "Omurus," Mina continued, the rows of the front going in first so the girls awaited for their turn. "Asui, Hagakure." Next, Yaoyorozu and Ida. Mr. Aizawa called out. Next, Ashido and Uraraka. The girls walk into the bus and Achako coached herself mentally. "Don't look at him. Don't look at him. Shit, where's my compact mirror?" Mina squeaked, causing the line to halt immediately. Mina's back bumped into Achako's chest, causing her to tumble back a little. Before she could grab onto the seats for balance, she found herself collapsed into someone's lap. "Oh no, that smell ... and oh no," Achako fretted. Without realizing it, a pair of strong arms were wrapped around her torso to catch her. She looked back at him with her mouth agape slightly. A sudden fear of acknowledgement washed over her. He didn't have this snarling viper look he always did. His vermilion eyes stared into hers softly. For a moment she didn't think about the people around her who probably would have maybe snickered at her clumsiness. She just couldn't help but feel this moment was oddly special. The usual Bakugo would throw her off and yell at everyone for what just happened. But he just raised his brows slowly. For someone who defies gravity, you'd think you could keep from being a klutz. His mouth opened, and although it popped her bubble of wonder, she'd chuckle at his comment, rubbing her neck nervously and blushing. Yeah, I should work on that." She rose up immediately. completely ignoring the fact that it wasn't his phone. She felt harden against her. Ashido, to your seat. Aizawa's glowing rubies and hair struck back. Mina didn't think twice. She ran back to her seat before he could further his rope. Uraraka didn't know how to think of the man. He was so ferocious and violent, but the man she fell on looked completely different. He wasn't a violent guy. He was calm and almost amused. His arms wrapped around her, and it made her feel safe. Like he didn't want her to fall even further, or maybe even get up right away. She wanted to be slapped. This was Bakugo. The man was a literal beast. The Baka squad sat in the living room watching a gag special. Bakugo not being there of his own will. Kirishima telling him he'd have to watch television first before they sparred. If Bakugo could stand anyone else, he'd leave. He slumped on the couch with his arms crossed. The elevator doors dinged and feminine voices came from behind, walking over toward the kitchen talking away. Bakugo glanced over seeing Pinky and Uraraka. His posture fixed a little as she walked by. She hadn't worn her shorts from earlier, but he could still see the plump peach she carried. He inhaled deeply as he watched her sit on the counter, and Mina made them both smoothies. A feeling of jealousy pinched him. He wouldn't ever break a sweat doing anything for anyone. But Mina would probably mess up. If these morons beside him didn't keep laughing and causing him to break his train of thought, he'd already gotten up and shown them both. That's why he wanted to do it. Not because he was the one who wanted to do it, but because he just knew Mina would ruin it. That's all. Watching Ochako from afar, a little slush fell on her chin and a little jolt below his stomach struck, especially watching her index finger scoop it up and insert it back in her mouth. He looked away immediately. If he hadn't, he'd grab her right there and take her to his room. Lying on his bed and checking his emails and voice messages for anything upon the plan. He wondered if maybe these new feelings had anything to do with it. Certainly would explain a lot. Ochako was hot and many of the girls had their own traits the guys noticed, sure. But Bakugo wasn't like most. He wouldn't think of them. The man had one goal, and that kept his mind occupied, and that's why he's the best. He found no reason to let anyone in. They're only distractions. One thing he knew though. This feeling wasn't going to leave probably till he fed whatever it was. He let his dick do the thinking earlier during the hike, but he honestly isn't the best at mind when it comes to flirting or seducing. He wouldn't admit it considering anything he tried he'd best it. He doesn't figure Ochako would go for him simply demanding it. And to be honest, he didn't find her to be just anyone. He found himself downstairs again. It was 10 at night and usually he'd be out, but he figured it was due to a small dinner. Beginning to cut the vegetables and prepping the chicken cubes, a couple of footsteps were to be heard. I knew I couldn't have peace even at this hour. Oh, hi. Uraraka softly spoke, only a tad louder than a whisper. His ears wore a shade of red as her voice struck through his chest. Uraraka noticed the back muscles his muscle tank didn't cover. They were much more noticeable now. She couldn't help but wonder how they felt to touch. He continued chopping his veggies. Hey, you couldn't sleep either? She asked, bringing a small different tone like small talk would cover what happened earlier. He didn't answer. The fuck am I supposed to say? She's acting like everything's normal. It's not like I want her to push herself on me. But if I do this wrong, I'll never get over it. She didn't try to ask again. She just grabbed her oatmeal cup from the cabinet and began prepping it. That's when he turned around. The hell you doing, cheeks? His rough voice asked, glancing at her before looking back at his food. I'm eating my breakfast for tomorrow. Which it's cool. Sue's mom is coming over for lunch tomorrow and she makes the best wonton soup. Ochako praised. Well, I didn't ask all that, he sassed, giving another look as he put back the leftover into the freezer, glancing at her ass and her leggings. All that sugar's going to your ass. She gasped and swiftly turned, furrowing her brows at him as he towered over her, amused by her sudden change of expression. I am not fat. She poked him. Didn't say you were, angel face. I said your ass was, smirking as he focuses on his meal. Ochako didn't know what startled her more, angel face or being told her ass was fat by Bakugo. Oh, you think you don't? Her comeback making his fist clench as he tuned around with an embarrassing blush. The hell you say to me, round face? She crosses her arms, proud of the comeback he finds so alarming. You heard me. You, Bakugo Katsuki, have a dump trunk. A peach. 3-tier cake. Stop that. He furrows his brows and his shoulders rolled up, feeling exposed. Why would even think that? Oh, so it's okay if it's my ass that's talked about or being touched, but yours is off limits. She closed the distance, which made him spook a little. She giggled. Are you shy, Bakugo? Her brown doe eyes glaring into his with purposeful venom. He didn't know if she was threatening him or flirting. Here he is. The terrifying Bakugo stood there frozen by the girl he dry humped in the woods. All it took was her to get closer. Thankfully, her mind was distracted by the good smell of his food. She gasped, your food looks so much better than mine. Go eat your damn food, round face. He grumbled. She pouted, and damn it, why did that make his dick jolt? Come on, you make the best food. Putting the cooker on low as he glanced back through the eating hall, assuring they were alone. Turning around to see her pout back to her cup of oatmeal at the counter, he leaned down to her ear. What do I get in return? She dropped her spoon into the cup. Her thighs tightened together. A small shudder left her lips. I in return. Grazing the hair from her neck to see the image of the small mark he left on her earlier. As far as I'm concerned. His hands were now on the counter beside hers. The massive difference was sending even more electricity through her. I've been awfully nice lately and got nothing in return. She bit her bottom lip, the heat from his body falling into hers. This wasn't who she was. She didn't normally try to entice a man like this. But to be fair, Bakugo started it. She gripped the joggers beside her and pushed her cheeks back into his bulge, looking up at his threatening eyes. Depends on what you want. What a fucking menace. An absolute nightmare. A damn imposter. Using her innocent looks and voice when she's trying to destroy me. Tell you what, you let me enjoy taking my time to dominate you. He spoke roughly and darkly into her ear as his strong hand gripped her thigh. And I'll cover your food. Why did this feel condescending and a good deal at the same time? Yes, she wanted him and his food, but she knew people would catch on. They couldn't just wait to eat whenever people weren't around. Bakugo took her pause a little alarming, worrying if he mistook her. Did he come on too strong? What if people notice? I wouldn't think you'd want someone to know. He scoffed. Fine, I helped Kirishima with his diet too, but we also spar. Think you can keep up with me in the gym? Can't promise to take easy on you. Again, nibbling her earlobe. Feeling his bulge push into her as his teeth on her lobe, she felt more intense and needy. Nodding as her lips shivered, he pulled her hair back. Use your words, he demanded. She nodded again. Why yes, he chuckled darkly, letting go of her altogether and preparing her a plate. Neither speaking of it as if it never happened. She wondered if they should go over stuff. Maybe exactly what dominating her meant fully. Also, sleeping on the same floor is both helpful and awkward, knowing they're going to the same place. Before parting to his hallway, he held out his hand. Give me your phone. His gruff demand caught her off guard. She slipped it out of her bra and handed it over. He cocked a brow. The hell, pink cheeks. Don't do that. His tone quite firm. Why? Could cause breast cancer, dumbass. He shook his head, mesmerized about having to teach her the simplest shit. She honestly never thought of that. She supposed he'd be the guy to know that. Honestly, it was kinda sweet in his own way. Giving her back the phone. Don't text me. She cocked her brow and looked through to see Katsuki in her contacts. And it wasn't her father. His given name. She wondered if it was okay to call him that. She didn't think he liked being called Kaken by Deku. Shoving her phone and getting comfy in the blanket after eating what tasted like a 4-course meal at some nice restaurant. She slept hard, having eaten a terrific meal and having thought she would get that food for a while at least. Slipping over her tights, skirt and buttoning her blouse, remembering not to store her phone into her bra, paying more attention to her cheeks, pinching them lightly, but truthfully blush was a given to her as to Bakugo's little remark on her pink cheeks nickname. Tying a half bun in the back as she added a small coat of lip gloss, walking with Tsu, Mina and Siro, talking about coming up assignments. Did your bruise ever heal, Choco? Tsu asks, referring to the mark on her neck. Oh, a little. Nervous as she could tell, Siro gave an odd stare. Does he know? No, he couldn't. Bakugo wouldn't tell him or anyone. I wouldn't think. Walking into class and immediately looking at the blonde who had his short sleeves rolled up his biceps, glaring at Todoroki and Deku talking like best friends that he swore he wasn't wanting to be part of. Once getting to her desk, sitting her books down and trying to take her jacket off, Deku walked over to help. Need help, Uraraka? Bakugo noticed and furrowed his brows. Boy, I think she can manage stripping of a single jacket. Once Deku and Uraraka both looked back, the sudden realization he just blurted out came over him. He huffed and turned around, tensing. Sorry, was I being rude? Deku asked nervously. No, Deku, I think Bakugo is just messing with you. She patted his back. Thanks for helping me, he growled to himself. No wonder she can't get anywhere. That nerd is always trying to do everything for her. He knew that wasn't true, but his jealousy disguised at hatred would tell him otherwise. Between classes, Bakugo surprised Uraraka with a text. Katsuki, unisex bathroom. Achako cocked a brow. What does he need me in there for? She had about 7 minutes before their next class, finding the only one near their floor and confused he wasn't near and it was obviously occupied. Pulling out her phone, asking where he was till a hand pulling her in. She squeaked, her back against the wall and noticing it was him. Bakugo, you scared me. She exhaled, relieved. His hands tucking the blouse out of her skirt. Katsuki, he corrected her. That's what you call me when we're alone. Kneeling before her, unbuttoning the bottom buttons and kissing her stomach gently. He was going slow, but it felt so fast. She nodded. Okay, Katsuki. The name melting on her tongue as his tongue joined her skin. She gasped with her hands in his soft hair, biting her skin and pulling it. She whimpers, pulling his hair. Katsuki. She lingered, her moan. He stood up, unbuttoning a few of his and tracing her hand over his abs. Seemed to have awful trouble taking off that jacket earlier. Might need some help taking off this uniform later too, I bet. His raspy voice spoke low, blushing, shivering and melting all under one moment. Maybe, is all she could get out. He smirked down at her, noticing her lip gloss making her plump lips look bigger, leaning down and licking across her lips. Whose attention you trying to grab? Gripping her waist close to him. As far as I'm concerned, they're for my enjoyment. His words crashing into her as dominant and demanding. Two can play at this game. She reached her hand over his bulge, softly rubbing him. A sharp gasp left him as he towered over her, his hand pushing into the wall. I think I'll wear what I want. Katsuki setting a seducing tone for his name. Don't I look pretty in it? Huh? Squeezing, and he immediately nodded. Why yes. His bangs laid over his face, hiding the shame he was being bested by this diabolical woman. Good, she giggled, letting go of him and buttoning her top. Come on, we'll be late for class. She pranced off, leaving him hard and trembling. Fucking tease. It wasn't long until Ochako closed the door behind her as she set her bag and coat on the table and collapsed into her bed when a few knocks were heard at the door. She grumbled under her breath. Maybe if I ignore it, they'll go away. A solid moment goes by and she sighs thankfully, till a louder few knocks appear. She whined into her pillow and wagged her legs in a fit. The aggressive knocking still going strong, she jolts up, swinging the door open. What? Before she could finish scanning who's on the other side, Bakugo pushed her in her room, closing the door behind him. His lips found her neck as his hands became friendly with her sides. Ochako tries to collect from her pouty aggression to now having her neck ravaged. She would want to throw him to Saturn, but his lips were so warm, and despite his aggressive demeanor he was somewhat gentle. Cupping her breast, Ochako gasped sharply, holding her hand over his. His knuckles were thick and calloused. Her finger pads close to them sends chills down his back. Can I? His tone dark and low in her ear as his fingers dangled around her buttons, looking into his vermilion eyes as they leveled to hers. She nodded, slowly unbuttoning them. A lazy grin appeared as he watched her unbutton herself. Wow, he whispered, watching her plump cleavage poke out of her bra, wrapping his hands around her waist, scanning her beauty. Damn, cheeks. You are beautiful. Ochako's pink cheeks matched her ears. She never took Bakugo as the type to speak this way to any woman, but let alone now. Sure, he was big bark kind of guy, but he was still plenty of bite. Lowering himself, slipping down her tights and kissing down her calves. She dug her nails into the wall behind her, activating her quirk unintentionally. Bakugo, noticing her legs somehow floating, and caught her waist. Oi, he scoffed as she blushed from embarrassment and deactivated her quirk, carrying her to her bed and laying her down, kissing up and down her stomach as her hands ran thoroughly in his hair. A small moan touching her stomach as he kissed. She supposed he liked his hair touched like this. She found it rather cute, the school's most feared student having something so adorable he liked. She lowered her hand, tugging at his collar, a tad stubborn as his lips found the crook of her curve more enticing. He snuck a hand between them, unbuttoning his shirt, licking a strip up her side, finding its way to her neck, arching her back as the sensation overwhelmed her. He towered over, chuckling darkly. Although he came off as dominant and fearless, he seemed to be at peace and enjoying taking it slow. It's not what she expected from him, but it was incredibly hard to not feel her sex underneath her skirt tense up, his abs and proud chest exposed as his shirt still lingered on his shoulders. It may have been a dorky thing to do, but she had to stare, actually taking in his hard-earned body, her hands sliding his shirt off his arms as she kissed his abs and up his torso, a rough exhale leaving his lips as his hand rested on the back of her head. She felt him tense under her lips, and loving the thought to add fuel to the fire inside him, she slid her hand down his uniform pants, letting her thumb find the crease of his inner thigh. He lowly groaned. Ochako. The small hairs on her back rose a little, furthering her hand close to his bulge. That's when his hand became a little rougher in her hair and tugged, removing her lips from his stomach and shortening her fun with his thigh. Impatient are we? Her doe brown eyes gawking into his, asking him both a question of what's next and a beg for more. Running his thumb over her moist plump lip, lowering it down her chin and shoulder, sliding off her strap. I should probably stop. Tell him to stop. But I really want this. He makes me feel amazing, and I really want more. She reached her arms back, undoing her bra, holding the cups close, a little worried of letting it come off all the way. Katsuki notices her sore look, grumbling to himself, but knows this isn't enjoyable for either if both aren't into it. You don't have to. His hand rested on her head. Surprised by the notion, warmth fell over her. Maybe it was that Bakugo wasn't the fire-breathing dragon as he seemed and wouldn't force it. It's okay, she spoke softly, letting go of her hold on the cups. Her breasts perked into the air. His mouth fell open a little, his finger tracing down around her nipple, feeling his hands tingle around her skin. She arched her back softly and laid back. Her skirt a little rose up her midsection as her thighs crossed together. He propped both knees by her sides and leaning down to snatch a nipple in his mouth. Lips closed around and tongue swirling over, the heat from his body absorbing into hers. Her hands found in his hair again, repeating the same gestures from before as he sucked hard. Katsuki, she whimpered, arching her back. his name on her lips fueling his drive and letting his teeth graze. She tugged on his hair, but he couldn't budge. He loved knowing he made her feel this way. She was putty in his arms, letting his mouth fall open and his tongue flicking her butt, and Uraraka felt the rush of need between her legs. He could feel it, how she tensed her thighs even tighter. He kneeled lower, letting his head graze over her uniform skirt, smelling in her heat and quickly rising up the fabric to view her panties swallowed inside her flesh. She was built like a goddess. Drooling over her, he leant down and kissed her clothed mound. Her moans lingered as her back arched, bringing her delicate flower lower. It didn't make him think twice, though. He found it again and began kissing it, roughly causing her juice to thicken. She felt him breathe heavily from his nostrils, using his strong hands to keep her legs apart, not minding it, although if her thighs crushed around his head, that would be his way to go. Katsuki, she panted. He rose up his eyes as he continued kissing the sacred area, worried she was now getting frightened again. You can take them off. She was about to blow. She knew she wouldn't want him to go too fast, but he was torturing her. His eyes widened at the surprise invitation. Not wasting time, his fingers dipped into the waistband of her panties and pulled down slowly. Watching the slick form around her slit, he let out a hungry groan and couldn't wait any longer, licking a rough strip up her wet slit. His long tongue already dipped inside her, scooping up her juice. Ugh, a little louder than before as she bucked her hips. She felt him smirk as his tongue continued its merciless licks. Bakugo was unstoppable, the way he ate all she had to give, and his tongue providing more and more. Her tugging his hair as she would come again for him. She could stay like this for hours. He rose up after finishing, smirking at the petite, curvy woman beneath him. His lips wet from his last meal. The only thing she wore was her skirt, but he likes it this way, knowing she was still partially in her uniform. I think you've been a little unfair, she voiced, looking at his pants. He chuckled and nods, signaling her with his finger to sit up. Wanna help me with that? Nervous but wouldn't let it stop her. Thought you'd never ask. Bakugo enjoying her comebacks as she wasn't a frail one who couldn't handle him. Unbuttoning his pants and lowering his zipper and sneaking her fingers inside, lowering the fabric. Noticing his pants aren't as baggy as they were, revealing his orange boxer briefs that lined out his massive size. She would consider it that, although she hadn't done this before, but knew enough to understand he was above average. Laying a hand on her head. Relax, angel face. I'm gonna train that throat to take me all the way, but it doesn't have to be yet. How did this man make her feel turned on and threatened at the same time? He slid out of his underwear and Achako's jaw dropped. Maybe she'd want to pretend to not be so stunned, but this was her first time. Smirking at her, watching his size, she was going frantic in her brain, trying to do the math on how she would walk after this, shoving her legs apart, and the rough notion sending a bolt of electricity in her core. Lowering himself between her legs, his forehead against hers, slowly dipping himself in circular motions, letting her feel his tip cost itself in her slick. MMMPH. She moaned, trying to peek down as the sensation arose. SHH, baby. He cooed. Looking will only upset you. Letting his tip fall in, she gasped sharply. It felt so good. The way he ate and her lips open at his tip was causing her to shake from need. Feeling only an inch fill her was taunting. And more. He snarled a lip, loving the way she's already taking him, shoving himself in more, letting her tight walls enclose. Fuck, he barked. Don't. I am not doing anything. She whimpered. Yes, you are. You're gonna make me come already. Try to relax. He positioned her legs further, giving his member more space. With that, he went a little faster, letting his size thrust her. He only gone halfway. Her moans and feminine grunts were swelling in his ears. Hearing her react to this was sending his member crazy, wanting to dominate her till she seen stars. Her arms wrapped around him. Her head was dipped into his neck as he focused on her size, trying not to go as rough as he wanted. So tight, Chaco. She couldn't help it. Her walls closed tighter, hearing him say it. Ugh, he groaned. I said stop that. He growled, pinning her legs on the bed, his grip on the back of knees, going a little faster. She cried out at the painful position, but the way he touched her spot was addictive. He was claiming her now. Good girl, he repeated as she grunted with each thrust, loving the praise he gave her. She bit her lip to keep from screaming and rolling her eyes back. He pulled her waist up to sit on top of him as he switched their positions, feeling him all the way, and she cried out as her fingernails dug into his chest. He thrust it into her quickly, loving the sound of her flesh smacking him, her breasts bouncing, smacking her cheeks and hips lightly as they jiggled a little. Katsuki. She closed her eyes tightly, shaking. He smirked, knowing she was close, and thankfully so was he. He held her hips tightly as he rocked into her faster and rougher, growling as he was taking her for his own lust, arching his back as he groaned out sharply, filling his seat into the condom. With Uraraka still trembling, he chuckled, lifting her up, and her juices fell on him, smacking her ass as she still emptied herself. She collapsed onto the bed beside him. He slipped off his condom, throwing it into the trash bin. She cared less, she was exposed fully to him. Her ass peeked out from her skirt. He caught his breath finding his boxers and pants as she still lied there passed out. Once buttoning his shirt he glanced at her, practically cooing and cuddling her pillow, feeling a slight jealous wanting to be the one she's doing it to. Bakugo's chest stung at the feeling. He patted her head lightly, covering with the sheets and finding his way out. A gasp was heard as he heard heels smacking the floor. He turned around cocking a brow and of course, Mina fucking Ashido. Uraraka woke up feeling as if she were in a wreck. A sudden throb between her legs. She whined raising up remembering what happened. Habib had this sudden urge to pee. Stripping the skirt away and gathering things for a shower she noticed her phone still charged. Katsuki, you'll be sore for a bit. Wash up and drink some water. Katsuki, by the way, what do you want to eat? Not only did she get her guts rammed but he was giving her tips and she almost jumped for joy remembering he was her own personal chef now. Achako, pork dumplings. Once Uraraka relaxed in the bath she couldn't believe it. She wasn't a virgin no more. Uraraka lost her virginity to Katsuki Bakugo. She didn't contemplate on if she'd tell anyone, or if she felt anything more. She felt her innocence slowly fade. She wasn't mommy's little girl anymore. She felt like she was closer to being a woman, and she couldn't help but feel she'd really miss it. You're in a good mood. Kirishima dodged Bakugo's punch. I always am, shitty hair. Katsuki spat as he caught Kiri's arm and throwing him. Kirishima chuckled as he got back up. Yeah, but, stretching his muscles, you seem like you're more chill or something. You got a girlfriend now or something. Bakugo snarled at his comment. Up your ass, sending off a blast. Whoa, Kiri activated his quirk. We said no quirks, Bakugo. Katsuki sneered. He knows Kirishima meant well but he didn't like anyone figuring him out. Kirishima wasn't even right. Achako wasn't his girl. They're just having fun. He doesn't have to explain shit to Kirishima. After calling it, they hit the showers and talked about their agencies. Still in a towel as he picked out his gym shorts and t-shirt. His phone buzzed on the bench seat. Mineta finding it best time to leech closer into his business. Fuck off, Graper, tossing him out of the way. Noticing the text was from the girl whose guts he just rearranged. Achako, pork dumplings. He smirked softly before slipping it into his pocket and shutting his locker door. It had been 2 days now since the incident. He had hoped to hear something by now. He had thought about making up complaints but that would just show he was weak to the plant's use. He still wondered if there were still side effects that hit him he wasn't aware about. Smells so good. A chipper familiar voice appeared beside him popping his bubble of wonder. He glared at her. She looked different. Hair was the same length. No makeup. Same comfy clothing. Why did she seem different? What? She asked concerned, deeply wondering if maybe he regretted it all. Was she bad at it? It was her first time but maybe she was supposed to do something. His gaze broke. Nothing. He kept to himself, preparing her dumplings. She pouted a little hating to be left in suspense. You just look pretty. Her ears shaded red and stomach fluttering. He was standing there in a tranquil light preparing food. It didn't seem to bother him he complimented her. When he would flatter someone usually he wasn't near them where they could hear. Despite he didn't ever give a thorough compliment without making it sound like a partial insult. Those for me. Kaminari busted their moment as he hopped onto the counter. In your dreams, Pikachu. He growled as dipped the dumplings into the pot and washed his hands. Oh come on. There are 4 of them. You can't eat all that. Achako wanted to blurt it out half of them were for her. She really wanted to. But she also didn't want to make Bakugo feel embarrassed. Like he had gone soft for her. Knowing it wasn't his style to go out of his way for others. 2 of them belonged to Uraraka, dickhead. Bakugo griped rolling his eyes before finding the bathroom. Denki looked at Achako with an arose brow. Oh my, why would our angry Pomeranian have such a soft side for making you food? He teased hopping off the counter. Thank the gods for her pink cheeks so the blush wouldn't be as obvious. Because Bakugo doesn't make food for anyone. So I can only assume it's pretty big if he's going through all this trouble. What? She rose her brows and waved her hands. You got it all wrong, Kaminari. Oh yeah. He cocked a brow hopping onto the counter beside her wrapping a playful arm around her. What is it then? Don't tell me you two are. The hell are you doing? A rough bark came from Bakugo as he appeared beside Kaminari suddenly. They both startled a little as Bakugo scowled at the blonde jester. We're training so she can eat whatever I cook, he explained with a sour tone pushing Kaminari off the counter. No fair. I'll train. He cut off his own words by looking the furious blonde in the eye. Never mind. Grabbing an apple and running off. Katsuki grabbed Uraraka a plate and she bounced with joy. He scoffed at her and turned his head from the appearing blush. She was excited for his food. He couldn't help but glance at her when she'd eat. It was like cannibalism. A dumpling eating a dumpling. She looked over, mouth full, cocking a brow. The blush he couldn't hide appeared. The way she looked with his food in her mouth as her cheeks were bigger than before, if it were even possible. He knew this feeling wasn't like before. It wasn't lust. It wasn't jealousy. It was deeper and it stung. Bedtime came around and Ochako couldn't help but feel exhausted of the day's activities. She had thrown her sheets in the bin, so it was a bare mattress kind of night. Thankfully, she had things such as a fleece hoodie to keep her warm. It was a gift from her grandma. It was in the form of a bear as it had little ears on the hood. She snuggled into it and thought of the day she's had, being pulled into a bathroom, losing her virginity, and having someone cook for her. Ochako really wanted a boyfriend, sure, but she knew Bakugo didn't want that. She couldn't just come out and ask about that. They had a good thing going, and she didn't need to throw it away by being her awkward, touchy self. She needed to be strong-willed like Bakugo. Bakugo finished his reps of push-ups, washed his face, and collapsed into his bed. He had a damn good day. In his head, he'd slept with the cutest girl in class. It wasn't his usual goal to find as a win or a contest, but he felt pretty good about it. The more he thought about it, the more he frowned. He wasn't a virgin before her. He'd only had sex one other time, and it wasn't special, maybe considering it was just a foreign exchange student at his middle school who was only there for a temporary time. The more he thought of Ochako, the more lonely he felt. He didn't want a girlfriend, didn't need one, especially one so close to Deku. But he hated knowing how good it felt to be with her, to cook for her, to see how hot she was having an orgasm. Half of his body wanting her, and the other half was his mind that wanted to hear her voice. He picked up his phone and found her contact. Ochako was almost asleep when she felt her phone buzz under her. A little grumpy but too startled to ignore it. "Katsuki, you awake, cheeks?" His name popping up sends a questionable wave through her. "Ochako, I was almost there. What's up?" Shit, he thought, deciding he'd probably not reply so she can go back to it, realizing it was dumb to text at this hour anyway. Resting his forearm on his head. "Buzz. Ochako, thanks by the way. I don't think I thanked you for the food." He looked at his phone immediately. For once glad he got a double text, feeling more assured she wasn't put off completely by his random messaging. "Katsuki, remember ... it's part of our deal, pink cheeks?" Ochako, of course. Smiling face. Bakugo taken by the emoji. This was her face 99% of the time. "Katsuki, we'll train starting tomorrow." Ochako, "Okay, just let me clean my sheets tomorrow first. Laundry unit closes after 8. Katsuki couldn't help but feel a little proud he was the reason for it. Then realizing she was probably sleeping with nothing extra. "Katsuki, did you use another sheet?" Ochako, "Nope, I got something better." Image attached. Bakugo cocked a brow as he opened it, his brow lowering as his gaze softened into a warm smile. She sent a selfie with a peace sign, with big brown eyes looking at him. Damn, she really is the cutest girl in class. "Katsuki, how warm is that round face?" Ochako, "Super warm. I could withstand it in a blizzard if I had to." "Katsuki, I'll need to check that. Come in here." Ochako's stomach fluttered as she read his message. Come in here. Was she ready for round 2? All in one day. The man needed to know boundaries. She carefully found his room on the other side. He left the door slightly open so she could get in without waking anyone. Noticing Bakugo grabbing an extra pillow from his closet, she took a deep breath. Ochako, he interrupted, his glare reminding her they're on first-name basis. He wasn't exactly scowling in a sour manner, as the man had a scowl for every emotion. "Katsuki," she corrected. "I don't think I'm cutting herself off by him smirking at her. Why are you looking at me like that?" "Yep, he's going to devour me." He chuckled, gesturing the hoodie. She blushed and exhaled while giggling. Though, he embraced her from behind, holding her close, helplessly blushing as his strong arms held her. "You're right. That's pretty warm." He spoke in her neck. "Had ... told you," she nervously replied, a little afraid of liking this feeling too much. He released her, walking back to his bed, resting on the further side. "Well, gonna go to sleep or what?" Ochako flustered and frozen. He wants me to actually sleep with him, fully clothed, completely put off by his notion. She had thought he was wanting another round, but he almost was ready to fall asleep. She walked over, pulling up the thick comforter and immediately falling in love with the fabric as she laid on the pillow. His cologne and caramel scent so inviting as she laid peacefully. He turned to his side, pulling her close to him, nuzzling his nose into her warm neck as his hands were cradled into the fabric. He is okay with this, she wondered as he embraced her, his body and comforter keeping her warm, and feeling his arms keep her close like she'd be in danger if he'd not been holding her. Bravely she held her hand over his, surprised he hadn't moved away still, both falling asleep in one another's arms. Bakugo's alarm goes off at 5 in the morning. The loud siren going off startled Ochako. Her eyes still closed and her soft snores returns. Bakugo reached his arm over and turned it off, pinching the bridge of his nose as he laid back, realizing the small figure beside him in her hoodie. She was still trying to sleep in. Thoughts went off in his head left and right. Wake her. She needs to get up. No, let her sleep. She doesn't have to get up whenever you do. As his thoughts battled which act he should do, she yawned and cuddled against him, trying to soak in his warmth. He lied back down, letting the small woman beside him weaken him. She was still asleep. He, however, couldn't sleep if he wanted to. This was his routine for years, so he'd crawl over her instead of waking her, getting dressed for his morning jog as she still slept there. He glared at her, wondering how the hell is her sleeping in his bed something he wanted to see more often. He hated affection, people, but why was she an exception? He'd use his run to help jog his brain in order, maybe finding the answer in that. Unsuccessful on finding any solution, he countered his thoughts back to his mission in a couple of days with Endeavor again, groaning at the reminder being paired with Isaha and Deku again, returning back to Heights Alliance and making him a small breakfast before the extras wake up and attempt to communicate with him. His phone vibrates. Hello, Katsuki Bakugo. This is Dr. Khan. I've been informed on the plant that had affected you. I'd like you to come in when you can so we can discuss it. I'll call your mother and... No, he interrupted. I need to talk to you privately about side effects. I don't need the my mother in that loop. You understand I will be sending her a voicemail nonetheless, seeing you are still underage. Whatever. Hanging up and heading to his room as the sun had already came up. Kirishima is a man that loves his sleep, but having Bakugo as a best friend, neighbor, and training buddy will push you to wake up earlier. The crimson-haired hero readied up, suspecting Bakugo forgot to set his alarm is why he didn't knock on his door already. Bakugo, rise and shine. Knocking a few solid hits. Eka bro. After a moment of no gripes or swears, he opens the door, finding the covers still wrapped over. He scoffed. Damn, not get much sleep last night. He pulled down the blanket a little, noticing the brown fuzzy hoodie, wanting to snort and get a picture that the gremlin he befriended likes to sleep in cutesy clothing to bed. He pulled the hoodie over, and the sudden realization on his face is shocked, seeing it definitely wasn't Bakugo. Stepping out of the room, afraid he was gonna freak out loud enough for her to wake up, he felt a hand roughly pull his shoulder back and into the hallways quicker than he intended. Bakugo closing the door and scowling spitefully into the same crimson eyes. The hell are you doing snooping in there? He grumbled. In deep shit, Kirishima tried to gather what was happening, let alone an excuse. Hey, Kirishima took a deep breath and scoffed. I went to wonder why you didn't wake me for our routine. Bakugo, I wasn't trying to pry, man. You know me better than that. Kirishima loved to tease his best friend, but this wasn't the time. Bakugo was a private guy and maybe one day he'd bother him about today, but now wasn't the time. Bakugo clenched his fists. Kirishima had now known him and Uraraka were closer. He wasn't a fan of secrets or hiding himself. He likes to be blunt and not worry about anything being used against him. So, why didn't you tell me? Bakugo shot up an agitated look. I mean, I figured it could been a girl. But Uraraka, he nodded. I mean, you didn't do it because of Midori, you're right. Are you claiming something, Kirishima? Bro, relax. I'm speaking as also a friend of Uraraka. You too, are you guys? No, and if we're, no one would know about it till we say so. Turning around to open the door as he'd seen Uraraka open the door, his surprised expression cutting his scowl off. Passing by Bakugo to look at Kirishima. Kirishima, we'd really appreciate it if you didn't tell anyone. We were just fooling around. It could just cause a lot of drama. She stood barefoot with the long hoodie on. A practical cutie pie, asking a good friend to keep it quiet. Bakugo acknowledged how much cuter she looked in the morning, but her word cut him off guard. Uraraka, it's okay. I'm sorry about coming in on ya. I just supposed he was sleeping in. She smiled despite feeling quite embarrassed and a little down. Thanks. She found herself walking to her side of the dorms. Bakugo slammed his door behind him, not understanding where to go from here, but he had to get to his appointment, so it would have to wait. Kirishima was a little upset that his best friend probably would have loved to kept on thinking no one knew, but honestly hated it knowing his best friend was still a stubborn-headed guy. Bakugo waited in his doctor's office, scrolling through his phone of his mother's constant texts reminding him to do simple shit like brushing his teeth and detoxing. Like the all-bag didn't know he did this religiously. Sorry to keep you waiting. His doctor came in. So, before I inform you of everything, you mentioned side effects? Yeah, he honestly didn't want to discuss this with anyone, especially a female. If it were his mother, she'd laugh and probably tell her friends. Ever since the incident I've had. Urges I've not really felt so hard before. Urges. Yeah. The nervous trying to show as Bakugo tried to make it seem hard to tell. You mean sexual? She blurted as if it meant nothing. He blushed and squirmed in the chair. TCH, you didn't have to say it. Furrowing his brows. I'm sorry, Mr. Bakugo, but it's quite normal to feel this. Boys your age over the world feel these. But if you say they've worsened after that day, then I can relieve you to some of that wonder. Bakugo somewhat enlightened at her words. After a lot of study, they were able to find the plants were being used by a known villain named Red Daily, and after interrogating her they found certain hormones along with the plant. One of our staff was also infected by the flower and report with the same side effects. He and you both having low estrogen are a risk for the oxytocin that was found inside the plant. Are you fucking telling me a flower is why he repositioned himself? Been feeling things? Mostly, yes. Some men when having a low sex drive use a high fiber diet. Work out. I do all those things, lady. He rolled his eyes at the incompetence. I understand that, but it doesn't make it entirely impossible either. Not quoting that the flower did you a favor, but sometimes suppressing your estrogen can be better in the long run, studies show. He knew it was dumb, but he wanted to ask. How the hell would he? Look, I gotta ask something, and I swear if I'm laughed at, you don't have to worry about that, Mr. Bakugo, she assured him. He took a deep breath. He circled his finger. All this shit mean if I were to feel that? Possible emotions, aside from lust, have a part in it? She cocked a brow. I'm not sure what you mean. He groaned in displeasure. Can getting aroused the way I did cause me to hallucinate literal feelings for someone? Could I have been lust-driven? He asked, conflicted. He needed closure, an answer to why he was weak for someone. I see. No, there's nothing in the plant that would trigger your brain. By the way, how are your eyes? He sighed. He wasn't excited nor depressed, but conflicted. He pushed away feelings like this, knowing he wasn't ready for it. But he wanted nothing more when he looked at her. They're fine. Bakugo takes the train on his way home, causally looking at his phone, feeling the bite of no messages from a certain chunky-cheeked girl. Not that he cared. He noticed Mr. Aizawa hanging around the first floor. It's not that he is never there, but usually is in his own dorm or office unless there's another adult here or they need supervision. Oi, soy sauce. What's he doing here? Bakugo called over towards Zero. Oh, Uraraka's parents are here, he answered before walking off with Kaminari. Maybe that's why I've not heard from her. A mix between relief and sudden realization came over him. She was too busy, or she didn't want to think about him when she's with her parents, who probably wouldn't approve. Not that he was planning on asking her out. It was just a thought is all. Bakugo, Kirishima called out, catching up with him. Ready for our spar? Bakugo paused. Not really in the mood. However, it beats the feeling of whatever the hell this was. Also, wanting to dodge any possibility of running into her parents. Come on, man, Kirishima started. I know you're upset. Talk to me. The crimson-haired hero held Bakugo in a headlock. Bakugo grumbled, throwing him over his shoulder, reversing positions. The fuck I have to talk about? Kirishima struggled but swooped the blonde's leg under him, freeing himself. Because usually I'd at least had almost lost a tooth by now. TCH. Bakugo rolled his tongue, taking off his shirt and throwing it. You want to lose a tooth, asshole? Cracking his knuckles. Fine, I can make that happen. Bakugo taking Kirishima's advice. Well, not really, but letting his body say what his mouth won't. You're doing okay though, right, hon? Achako's mother sat on the bed holding Achako close. Of course, she looked at her dad, who seemed to be conflicted but trying to play it off by glancing at her school books. Dad, are you okay? He shoots up a smile and nods, sliding his hands in his pockets. I'm fine, Chaco. We just wanted to check in on you. Achako looked at her mom, trying to find exactly why it is they're here. They always check in, but their vibe is off, and she's worried it has something to do with their financial situation. Your dad isn't that good of a liar, huh? Her mother chuckled innocently while sighing. Look, we saw where some of your classmates were on the news, and it just seemed quite worrisome. Looks like you guys are going through some trying things. Oh, you guys don't have to worry about me. Aizawa-sensei is teaching us so much, and not only him. Plus, there's so much I've learned and new moves I've been conquering. She holds her fists close to her chest. Well, there's another thing. Her mother mentions sheepishly. What? She looks at both of them, worried. It's, her mother stuttered. It's that Bakugo kid. We don't think he's safe to be around. Her father spoke up. Ka Bakugo, she corrected. No, you guys don't still think he's like a bad guy, do you? He respects me, is why he beat me that time. You guys understood that. Of course, that's not exactly why we feel that way mostly. It's just the way he even is on the news. I mean, the press covers the fights all the time. The way he fights isn't like he's fighting with teammates, it's as if everyone is his enemy, and he doesn't seem to care if he blasts a whole building down to win. Her mother explained carefully. Sometimes that's what it takes to ensure that villain goes down. Look, I know he's a rough guy, but he's not like that completely. He's actually got a good side. Achako defended him. Part of her knew as a classmate it was important to stand by your comrade, but she also had been touched and cooked for by him too. So she knew up front he had good ways about him. The fact you two sleep on the same floor doesn't make it easier, Chaco, her father added. She sighs. Guys, I understand. Really, I know how he looks. I know how he talks. And truly I wish he could learn to be better with words. But if you guys trust me, then please trust when I say I trust him. I really do. She gave her parents both earnest looks. She of all people knew how mean he was, how rough and unapologetic he was. But that was what made him. She wouldn't want him any other way. Okay, we trust you, Chaco. Her mother kissed her cheek, her father nodding, smiling down at her. They were both proud and trusting, but it was hard knowing the danger she was in and knowing a guy who explodes anything he pleases without regard is only a few doors down. Bakugo sat on the porch while his mother screamed at him on the phone. I can't believe you'd go there alone. What? You think because you live away from me that means you're too big to let me know anything? Well, I got news for you. Bakugo letting the phone float away from his ears in his hand. Griping bitch, he mumbled. What did you say? He heard over the phone as he noticed an older couple coming out. Realizing who they were, he stood back behind a column. I just wish she'd come home. Her father moped. Would make me feel a lot better knowing she's safe from villains and that damn explosive kid. Bakugo's eye twitched as he heard the words, knowing there's no one else he would be meaning. Wondering if Ochako told them. Look, we can't do that her. We trust her right. Just as she trusts that boy. We may not understand it, but maybe he isn't as bad as we think. I mean, it doesn't seem they're close or anything, but maybe she's right. She comforts her husband. Her mother's words linger in his ear. Realizing Ochako stood up for him when his name was backed into a corner. The yelling from his mother on the phone distancing as he lowered it. Bakugo stood there a moment. From everything his doctor told him, using Kirishima's body as a punching bag, and hearing the girl, he developed feelings for stand up for him when he couldn't blame adults for not liking him. Not that he'd ever change. He wouldn't do that for anyone, but still. Ochako knew all that and still chose to stand by him. Katsuki, are you still there? His mother cried out on the phone. He grumbled, answering. I gotta go, hag. I'll call you later so you can yell some more. Hanging up and finding his way back inside. Taking the stairs as he didn't feel like jittering inside a slow elevator. Finding Ochako's room and knocking. Coming. She gets up from her bed, opening the door, catching Bakugo standing there with a look of something pitiful, but somehow he made it look hot. Hey, he was able to word out. As she began to speak, he cupped her face, kissing her. Catching her by surprise. Bakugo had done many things to her, but never kissed. Basking in their lips as this is new to both of them. Both walking more into her room and closing the door. His hands never leave her cheeks and lips never breaking. Her hands hook onto his wrists. Both their lips slowly stop working as they linger on one another. Chako, he stuttered, trying to find the courage. Their foreheads lied against each other, their lips grazing and hands still in position. She doesn't know what to make of him. He seemed to be irritated earlier by Kirishima finding out about them, so this sudden change was a little difficult to read. He wanted to say it. It's what he felt. It's what had been killing him about her since they fought. But this was harder to say when she probably didn't understand what he was doing. He took a deep breath, letting go of her face and running a hand through his hair. She stood there like she was on trial, worried if a move might trigger him. He was such a peculiar guy, like watching a dog try a new trick. He blushed and gritted his teeth. Chako, he began tugging at his hair. She giggled, not able to contain how cute he was. He furrows his brows, growling. Oi, this isn't easy. Katsuki, she sang, slightly causing his expression to soften, walking closer to him as he backed into the wall, letting her index finger trace between his pecs. Are you trying to ask me out? Flustered and nervous, he scoffed as if that wasn't what he was trying to say. To ch. However, her giggling and poking wasn't letting up. She cocked a brow, not wanting to use your words, watching her scheming expression causing his member to jolt a little. She kneeled before him, running her hands up his thighs slowly. He groaned, positioning his back fully on the wall, using her teeth to unzip his pants, dropping his jaw as he watched her glare at him the whole time. Fuck, he mumbled. She was the hottest thing he'd ever seen. He took her virginity a day before, and now she was trying to take all of him. Lowering his pants and viewing the throbbing bulge in his boxers before she released him. Slight worry came over her as she hoped she wouldn't mess up. She'd want to please him, dominate him for a change. She licked the tip, making him gasp, giggling before licking from the base to the tip, quickly then slowly, his precum already coating her tongue. Removing her shirt and thankful her hair is tied back, she took him in again, moaning as he laid in her mouth. He began to whine a little. Her tongue lapped as she bobbed her head. She felt so good feeling him come undone in her embrace, knowing she was better than anyone at teasing him, holding onto his legs as she tried to take him all, gagging her first few tries before trying again. His hand fisted into her hair and forcing her throat to take it, gagging aggressively as her unintentional orgasm was begging for more. Bakugo became addictive to her gagging as he shoved her all the way on him, releasing his seed inside her. Scratching his thighs, needing to breathe, he let go. Half of his seed she swallowed and the rest dripped from her mouth. Tears falling, mouth filled with his seed, and body shaking from her high. He chuckled while looking at her, walking behind her and kneeling down, pushing her forward. Clean that up. Shoving her shorts down to her knees, she dropped her jaw, looking back before he repositioned her to clean up. Now, stroking himself with one hand while keeping a hand on the middle of her back as she bent over to obey, not even needing to spit as her slick was thick. His member hard again, he slid inside slowly. She arched her back and sang a gasp. Done cleaning up? He asked before he shoved himself fully inside. She gripped the floor and cried out, "Cat-aw," his seed being smushed by her cheek, holding both her hips as he quickened his pace, growling as he thrusted uncontrollably, her ass bouncing off him, his orgasm ripping through him quickly as he came abruptly, his seed filling her up. She felt it as she howled, Exhausted and panting, he caught his breath and slid out of her, watching his seed spill from her, rubbing her back. "Choco, I didn't mean to ... didn't feel it coming," he worded, sounding a little embarrassed. She panted and rose slowly. "It's fine." She was trying to manage to stand. She didn't exactly want to talk about birth control or getting a plan B. It was both expensive and she couldn't afford that. He pulled up his pants and grabbed a towel to clean her up. She sat against her desk, managing to realize sex was, at least with Bakugo, a struggle to stand afterwards. So, he walked toward her, grasping her bare waist. "You want to go out with me?" His dominant smirk melting her in his arms. As soon as Bakugo was out of the hall, Ochako ran to Mina's door. "Mina, you have to help me." Busting through her door and now wishing she hadn't. It wasn't anything scandalous, but seeing a bruised Kirishima given a massage by pink hands were just shocking altogether. Mina was giggling and Kiri was blushing and looked like he'd bust from embarrassment. "Hey, Choco." Mina beamed. "You okay?" "Why, yeah, sorry, should I come back?" Pointing her thumb to the door. "Don't be silly." Mina waved her to come in. "I'm just giving Kirishima a massage because for some reason he thinks challenging Bakugo was a good idea. He needed it, Mina. Plus, it'd be unmanly to just be too scared of a few bruises." He defended in a pout. Well, I kind of got something going on, and was hoping to talk to Mina." Kirishima cocked a brow, mouthing, "Does she know?" Quickly dropped his lips as Mina leaned in. "Well, I guess it's really not a big secret now." She rubbed her hand up her other arm. "Katsuki sorta asked me out," she nervously stated. Mina gasped, gripping Kiri's shoulders. "He did what?" "Oh," Kiri groaned out. "You mean our spicy little gremlin wants to date our sweet innocent Uravity?" Ochako blushed and shrugged. "Yeah, so would you want to help me prepare? I've never been on a date." "Well, Mina choked on her words. "As if you have to ask." Mina bounced up, opening her closet. "Where are you guys going?" No idea. I honestly don't think Katsuki does either." "Oh," Mina giggled. "Katsuki," mimicking how adorable her saying his first name was. "Sounds like Bakugo. I'm surprised he didn't just ask you to spar." Kirishima slid his shirt back on. "I have the funnest idea." Mina held both Ochako's shoulder. "Why don't we forego on a double date?" Ochako didn't think Bakugo would like it, but she couldn't help but think it sounded fun. "What, me?" Kirishima blushed. "Yes, the four of us would have so much fun, and I'm sure Bakugo doesn't know the first thing about dating. Probably would explode himself before wrapping an arm around her." Mina made a point. "But Bakugo probably won't go for it." Kirishima tried to find an excuse. "You're his best friend. Convince him. Plus, Choco, you're his girl, you can convince him too." Hearing those words, his girl hits different. "They feel nice." "Got it." Ochako furrowed her brows and tightens her fists into her chest. Kirishima moped on his way over with Ochako. "What's wrong?" Ochako asked in the hall. "Do you not want to come?" "It's not that." He struggled. "Do you already have someone?" "No," Kiri groaned. It's just weird going on a play date like this. With Mina above all people." "Why Mina?" Ochako cocked a brow and then it hit her. "Oh, wow, I never knew you felt like that." "She doesn't either, and I'd like to keep it that way." Kirishima eyed her. "You got it," she promised. Mina was her closest friend, but she owed Kirishima for keeping a lid on them. Approaching Bakugo's door and both trying to find what words to use that one of them sent out the window. Bakugo opens the door in a towel, obviously coming back from a shower. Ochako bit her lip, eyeing his chiseled V-section. "The hell?" Bakugo grumbled. Then realizing, "I suppose you already know, shitty hair." He rolled his eyes, walking back into his room. About that." Kirishima nervously chuckled. Bakugo glaring back with a scowl. "What'd you say about a double date? You, Uraraka, me and Mina. We could do mini golf. A movie. The hell is wrong with you? This has nothing to do with you or Pinky. How am I supposed to be with Ochako while you two are chumming in my ear?" Kirishima scratched his head, desperately wanting to back away. "Katsuki." Bakugo bringing his focus down, agitated as she could tell his jaw was clenched, which made it hard to not strip for him there and now. "Mina thinks it might help. She knows you're not really for the dating stuff, so she is just wanting to be helpful." Her bubbly smile making him groan in displeasure. "Fine." He gritted his teeth. "But if you two so much as..." Bakugo eyed Kirishima. "Say no more, buddy." Kirishima shot a toothy grin with his thumbs up. As they both walk out, Bakugo grabbed Uraraka, wrapping an arm around his waist before shutting the door. "Katsuki." She laughed and cried out. "We got time for another round." Bakugo held open the door for Ochako as they walked into the restaurant, letting it shut on Kirishima and Mina. "Can you tell he's excited we're here?" Kirishima nudged Mina. She giggled as Kirishima held it open for her before following after, being seated as the chef began preparing their food before them. Bakugo couldn't help but look down at Uraraka's wear. The bright yellow kami strap dress really suited her. Her brown hair mixing with the sunlight shade only made her glow. "What?" She blushed. Bakugo continued to stare, his hand laying firmly on her thigh, wanting to tell her how beautiful she was, but his brain was boggled by blunt questions and annoying snickers of the couple beside them. Will you morons keep it down? Bakugo gritted his teeth. Ochako loved that Kirishima and Mina came along, but she did understand this was both their first date, and Bakugo clearly felt he wasn't able to express himself easily this way. She laid her hand over his. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. Bakugo's expression softened by the surprise she was apologizing. He sighed heavily through his nostrils, his fingertips lightly stroking her thigh. Not saying anything. Bakugo's eyes always talked, and people who knew him well knew what he had to say through them. Ochako beamed with a supportive smile. "You know, we never did spar." He cocked a brow and smirked. "Yeah," caressing her chin. "I think I made you work up a sweat otherwise, though." She blushed and leaned into his shoulder. "Katsuki," she giggled. "How long is this gonna take?" "I'm starving," Kirishima whined, sulking in his chair. "Oh, stop whining. You're gonna ruin their date." She nudges him. Mina wore black miniskirt with a shoulder-exposed long sleeve. The way she nudged him scrunched up her cleavage, which made Kirishima wince like a dork as she touched him. "You okay?" "I'm fine," clenching to his chair as he tried to keep his attention on the chef. Mina thought he was acting strange. He's usually more laid back and talkative, but he seemed annoyed. After enjoying their meal, Mina and Uraraka visit the bathroom before leaving. "So, is my favorite heckler being good?" Mina perfecting her lipstick. "Yes." Ochako blushed and giggled, noticing how beautiful Mina was, and she was probably not aware of Kirishima's feelings. The girlfriend in her wanting to tell her so bad, but no, she's also entitled to keeping her promise. "I still can't believe Bakugo is on a date with you of all people." Ochako cocked a brow. She knew it was weird and surprising, but her words were a little weird to hear out loud. "Yeah, well, I guess because everyone expected you and Midoriya or Ida to be a thing, and now you and Bakugo are together, so." "Oh," she chuckled that anyone thought she was interested in Ida like that. Truthfully, it would have been great because he's respectful, handsome, and came from a good family. And she did have conflicted feelings for Izuku, but things like that change when other feelings come abroad. "Not that I'm saying you should be with them," Mina quickly corrected. "I mean, Bakugo must actually not be good at hiding his feelings when it came to you, so it's really a nice side of him." The girls chuckled. "Things aren't really official, but I mean, I just really like how I feel with him. He drives my fuel to wanting to be better, like Deku. And he's Mina sang as she poked. "Really good in bed." Ochako squeaked before Mina gasped and bounced. "Okay, you can share all those details in a sleepover soon." Bakugo and Kirishima sat outside leaning against the wall. Bakugo growled with every minute they weren't out yet. "Come on, man, don't be like that. Uraraka doesn't want to be on a date with a bear." Kiri poked. Considering you were sulking in your chair the entire time anytime Mina got too close to you." Bakugo felt quite good about the comeback. He honestly didn't notice it, but Ochako mentioned it quietly during their dinner. "What?" Kiri blushed and put off by Bakugo's comment. "I wasn't a." Kiri crossed his arms and looked the other way. "You know, for a guy whose goal is manly this and manly that, you sure got some pussy ways." Bakugo sneered. "Hey, you and Uraraka weren't friends before you hooked up. Mina and I go way back. If I go in, and she isn't into me, I'm worse off." Bakugo saw the actual conflict in his eyes. It was true, he and Ochako weren't close, but respected each other. But he still felt if he of all people could land Ochako, Kirishima could shut his insecurity out the house for at least one night and ask out the girl he's in love with on an actual date. "Sorry to take us so long." There was a line. Mina mentioned locking arms with Kiri. "Liar," Bakugo grumbled. "Yeah, but what are you gonna do?" Mina shrugged carelessly. "So where to?" "Well, we were gonna be able to walk to the movie, but now we gotta call a cab since you two decided to take a nap back there." Bakugo called for a driver. Baby gets testy when he doesn't get Mama Chaka to himself. Mina teased. Bakugo stuck up his middle finger while calling over a car. Bakugo and Kirishima paid for both the girls' tickets and snacks and follows them inside the showing. Bakugo glances at Ochako sitting with Mina, whistles at her to sit with him in the row behind them. "Why?" She furrowed her brows, pouting. He shook the snacks he had for her, and that was enough convincing. Before grabbing them, he held them up to tease her, and she lifted to kiss him, which wasn't fair, but he allowed it, lowering his arm, letting her have it. He liked seeing she could always have room for anything sweet even after a big meal. It was hot for a girl her size. Kirishima understood Bakugo wanting to be alone with Uraraka, but damn, he felt this was intentional. The movie theater was surprisingly empty. If there were other couples here, he'd probably burst. The movie was halfway in. The screen was reflecting on Mina's pink skin, making it hard not to glance when he noticed it. She was into the movie as she reacted adorably. It was a horror film, but it wasn't really scary as it was more entertaining. Bakugo's hand laid on Ochako's leg as his thumb stroked the material. Ochako's heat got worse. His scent was ravaging. Wearing a black t-shirt and dog tag, she glared at him. His bulging biceps, his blonde hair laid on the back of his masculine neck, causing her to bite her lip. Bakugo could sense her glare, knowing she was getting hot by the way her thighs tensed. Letting his hand grasp her thigh and rub a little close to her sex, then pulling away. smirking at the little pout she made. This was Bakugo's date, not Kirishima's, but knowing the poor red-headed idiot was too scared to make a move, he'd place him and Uraraka back, seeing he wanted her all to himself anyway. Bakugo didn't give two fucks. This was his date, his girl. He was going to kiss her no matter how awkward it was for anyone else. Bakugo leaned over, trapping Achako's lips. She immediately followed him, running her hands in his hair, both their heads bobbing against one another as the kiss deepened. Kirishima hearing the odd sounds, he looked back, seeing Achako on Bakugo's lap as both their faces were hid, devouring one another. Fuck, Kiri sighed, looking back to the movie, unable to understand how he has to have her this much. It's not like Kirishima didn't want sex or affection, but it wasn't something he was merely focused on or even seeing it possible for him yet. Mina looked back and giggling. They're so cute, she whispered. Kirishima blushing red, as now they're both the only couple who's here that isn't touching. He wanted to think it was okay to not make a move. Mina wasn't doing it, and she's fearless. Mina had felt the vibe change. Kiri was definitely nervous and embarrassed. She liked Kirishima, and he was so kind, hardworking, and really hot. She knew he wasn't really into the dating stuff though. She wasn't that experienced either, but she didn't want him to feel they have to have a bad time because Bakugo and Uraraka couldn't wait to be alone. Kirishima, she spoke softly. He looked at her with a curious expression. Put your arm around me. His face turned white as she told him. He froze and thought over the notion. You sure? Do it before I change my mind, she warned before he quickly did so, snuggling against him as his body trembled at the feeling of her being so close. If they weren't here, I'd have you bent over this seat, he whispered lowly in her ear. She bit her lip, really regretting the idea of a double date. She really didn't mind the thought of being rammed by her hot boyfriend in a theater, making it hard to keep her legs closed, knowing if she opens them his hand would definitely make her squeal. His lips nibbled her cheek and bit the chunk. She whined as he gnawed. He let go, chuckling before licking up her cheek. Getting back to Heights Alliance, they were stopped by a nosy Kaminari. Hey, I wanted to go out too, he whined. You didn't miss anything, buddy, Kirishima politely comforted his friend. Mina knew. She knew he didn't mean it that way, but it still sucked. She walked off toward the elevators, Kirishima noticing immediately, but Kaminari's game of 20 questions kept him stalled. Achako noticed but knew she didn't want her and Katsuki's date put off anymore, so looked at Bakugo, who rolled his eyes. Don't be long, he grumbled. Thanks, squeezing his hand before finding Mina. Bakugo, I've been trying to contact you. We have our work study again tomorrow. Meet with me in Midoriya here by 10 in the morning. Todoroki popped up near Bakugo. Your asses can meet me. Bakugo griped. That would be fine, Todoroki replied flatly, starving Bakugo of the argument. Katsuki sneered as he made his way upstairs. I'm sure he didn't mean it, means. Achako rubbed Mina's back as they sat on her pink bed. I know he didn't. But if he was that annoyed at the thought of being with me, why did he even go? I don't think it's like that exactly. Don't spill it, Achako. Honestly, I think you of all people know he definitely wouldn't feel that way with you. He's kind and friendly, and I think maybe it was just where Bakugo didn't want anyone tagging along. Ugh, I'm sorry, Achako, Mina groaned. This is your date and I'm making it about me. Don't say that. Trust me, even if Bakugo feels different, I was glad you guys were there. It felt so nice being out with everyone, she comforted Mina. Uraraka lied inside Bakugo's bed, wearing her 13 t-shirt and yoga shorts while Bakugo done his brass knuckles reps. She traced her fingers down his spine and back muscles while resting on her propped arm. Shit, I forgot to wash my sheets, Achako moaned. Don't TCH me, she sassed. I'll do whatever the fuck I please, breaking his brass knuckles. Damn, do they even make these strong anymore? Bakugo threw them across his room. Achako snickered as he glared back, scowling. Fearless as she was, he snarled. She bit her lip as she knew he was getting testy. He towered over her, pushing her legs apart and dipping his midsection down as his elbows positioned on both sides of her head. What's funny, Uravity? His low voice and angelic face causing her to forget why she even snickered, running her finger down his broad chest. His head dipped, his blonde bangs hiding his eyes. So, you wanna do this with me? He asked lowly. Well, we've done it a few times already. Not that, moron. He rolled his eyes. Her eyes widened as she blushed. Wait, you mean, are you asking to be my boyfriend, Katsuki? She teases. He grumbled. She giggled at his Frankenstein response. You know you gotta do boyfriend things. She traces his shoulders. TCH. What? You want some fruity bitch shoes? Pouting aggressively. She chuckled at how cute he was. I didn't say that. Boyfriends listen, they let their girlfriends win arguments. I ain't letting you win shit, Bakugo griped. Achako bucked her hips, thrusting against his bulge, his mouth agape as her mouth massaged his member, feeling him harden against her. And no, you're not off to a good start, Katsuki. She quickened her pace, teasing him. He mumbled, trying to hold his ground while she taunted him. She tossed her head back, moaning to add to the fun game. He widened his eyes, watching her. Fuck me, he mumbled. Okay, fine, fuck, he groaned. She let up and he leant down to kiss her hungrily, his tongue roaming in her mouth as she wrapped her hands in his thick hair. Suddenly, hearing a knock at the door but ignoring it, the door opens. Kaken. You in? I was just Deku popping in, covering his eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Wait, Uraraka, is that you? Izuku's surprised tone changing. Hey, Deku, she squeaked. Deku, damn it, get the fuck out of here. Bakugo wanting to get up and throw him out but having a hard time. Alright, so sorry, just wanted to give you a reminder about tomorrow. I wasn't sure if Todoroki had already. Before squirming to get out, Midoriya completely surprised. Ochako was a best friend and Kaken was his bully, but nonetheless he was just stunned at the pair. He had no idea. He had wondered how long it was going on considering he was close to Ochako and thought he knew Bakugo well. Fucking moron, Bakugo mumbled into her neck. Ochako felt a little embarrassed. She hoped Midoriya wouldn't be upset she didn't talk to him about anything. Katsuki was Izuku's bully, but she never gave it much thought. What's going on tomorrow? Working with Isahat's old man. He laid back over his spot, cutting off his lamp. Oh, that's nice. Her voice a little higher than usual. What's up with you? He cocked a brow. What? Deku finds us and you wanna back out? I didn't say that, Kat. I just never told him or really anyone about us, so I guess I hope he just understands. She shrugged. He'll get over it. Bakugo embraced her snugly as he positioned himself for some sleep. Ochako knew Bakugo was a good guy, and she likes him for who he is. But she also worries how her relationship with Bakugo and friendship with Izuku will go, hoping she can be the one to loosen the knot between the two. Bakugo took the train with Todoroki and Deku sinking into his seat with his AirPods stuffed in his ears as the two talked away, sometimes muting to see if they were gossiping about him. You seem a little distraught, Midoriya. Are you nervous? Todoroki asked. Me. Deku blushed while being what felt like interrogated. Well, I guess looking back at Bakugo, seeing he was blasting his music through his AirPods, realizing he could speak freely. I guess I was just a little surprised how I found out Kaken and Uraraka are dating. Rubbing his neck grievingly. Excuse me. Todoroki cocked a brow. Yeah, that's quite alarming. Are you sure? Deku thought back when he barged inside Kaken's door, at the clear image of Uraraka under Kaken doing what he couldn't say. Well, they're close anyway. Todoroki looked at Bakugo, giving him an awkward and dull glare. Bakugo noticed and snarled his lip. Shoto looking over toward Deku again. I find it unlikely to be anything more than training. Todoroki's word training was the key, unless they're expecting to find a villain under the sheets. He doesn't think training is what that was. Uraraka couldn't have chosen a better agency, especially to be with her best friend, Tsu, in third-year Nijire. She grew to like her a lot. She was beautiful and had a lot to fun with. The girls sat around the picnic table as they tossed kebabs one to another. Hey girls, can I get a picture of the four of us? Mirio is wanting to show Tamaki the team. Nijire giddily asks. I don't see why not. Hiro, sounds great. Ochako barely able to make out as her mouth was filled with grilled chicken. Uraraka and Nijire on both sides of Tsu scrunched against her and Sirius in the back holding up peace signs for a photograph, smiling. Chako, there is something I've been meaning to ask you. Tsu mentions as Nijire sends Mirio the photo. What's up, Tsu? The bouncy brunette sips on her juice. I've heard you and Mina went on a double date with Bakugo in Kirishima. Tsu's words surprised Ochako. She assumed people would catch on and she did mean to tell her friends all about it on a possible sleepover soon. I guess what I'm asking is why would you go out with Bakugo? He's violent and always rude. I know he's our classmate, but spending actual time with him on a date must have been terrible. Ochako's cheeks were flustered as she looked down, tapping her empty stick on the table. Well, he wasn't actually. Ochako was afraid of this part, having to explain to everyone he wasn't as bad as he seemed. Not that it was believable. What do you mean? He paid for dinner. Was fine that Kirishima and Mina tagged along. And honestly, I like the way I feel when he looks at me. She blushed, remembering the way he looked at her at the restaurant. She knew explaining to all only made it sound desperate for approval, so she kept it at that. So, girls, ready for some more fun? Nijire bounced up holding the beach ball. Bakugo sat on the building waiting for it to be called a night. Could you stop chewing so loud? He griped loudly as Deku ate his rice bun. Sorry, the green curly-haired boy said with a mouthful. The blonde sneered as he looked away, noticing the sun has went down. Though, looks like Uraraka and Asui are having a nice time with Nijire at Ryukyu Agency. Deku mentioned coming across the picture Mirio posted. Bakugo didn't care. Yeah, his girlfriend was in it, but he'd look at it later. He didn't need Deku of all people letting him know what his girlfriend was doing. Although, curiosity had sprung him. He'd pull out his own phone and find the picture. A jolt of electricity sprinting through him. She wore a pink bikini. Of course, her trading color. A little flare of rage swam inside him. Why was another guy sharing this picture? Was he the one who took it? A great team for Ryukyu, he captioned on the post. He snarled his lip up. Fucking fridge with hair that looked like a mullet and faux hawk threw up on him. What's wrong, Bakugo? You look constipated. Todoroki broke his bubble of rage. Shut up, fucker. He jumped up and going to lean back on the further wall. Ochako was getting ready to change out of her swimwear when she checked her bag for her clothing and noticing a text on her phone. Katsuki, how's your orgy? She furrowed her brows. My orgy. Did he hit his head? Ochako, what? Katsuki, playing stupid is an ugly look, so just be fucking honest. Scratching her head as confusion lays over her. Ochako, Katsuki, I really don't understand. Katsuki, image attached. The picture of the 3 girls at the beach. Ochako scoffed. What a drama queen. Ochako, you're mad over that. Face with hand over mouth, he wasn't there. Medjire sent it to him after taking it. She honestly thought it was adorable. The way he was jealous was predictable and amusing. He furrowed his brows, pouting, relieved, and felt like an ass, partially realizing he didn't want to feel he was obsessing over her and also not wanting her to think he felt like sharing. He pouted for a while, not returning a text. Thankfully, Ochako was fluent in Baku language. Ochako, image attached. Bakugo opens his phone after telling himself he didn't care about it before seeing her in her pink bikini and another picture of her backside. The flurry skirt not hiding her cheeks, and a jolt of heat went through him, imagining being the one that was there with her. He felt jealous. Not that he didn't want to be working for his career. That was his first priority. But he imagined how the sun reflected on her silky skin, the pink bikini complementing her curves. Ochako, still mad, grouchy pants, face with tongue. He huffed but luckily wasn't going to dwell on it. Katsuki, shut up. Katsuki, you should send more though. Ochako giggled and couldn't help but to grant his wish, sending a few. One with her strap falling down as she bit her lip. That would be his favorite. Katsuki, such a fucking tease. Ochako, it's so easy, Katsuki. Smiling face, arriving back home to Heights Alliance. Deku called out to Bakugo before he retreated to his room. Kaken, can I talk to you? Bakugo grumbled. Hell no, Kaken, it's about Uraraka, he mentioned sternly. Bakugo halted, scowling back at the green-haired hero. Look, I just want to ask why Uraraka. Bakugo sneered at the question. Are you really gonna ask me dumb shit like that? Deku was conflicted. He cared about Uraraka. She was kind and selfless, but also had an important reason why she was here, and knowing Kaken, someone he also cared about but knew of his spiteful tendencies. He was worried if it would affect her in a bad way. Bakugo had kept Deku's secret, so he wasn't all bad, and Deku knew this. He had growth and Deku was pleased with that, but Bakugo also knew Ochako was friends with him as soon as they all entered UA. So what? You think I'm with her for my own demise or some shit? I know it wouldn't be like you to think you'd need someone to do that, but nonetheless, Uraraka is my friend, and honestly, if you two are good for one another, I'll support you both. I don't need your damn support. Bakugo spat. I didn't mean that way, Kaken. Deku held his hands defensively. I meant, I'm happy for you both if you're happy together. Bakugo's spiteful expression was cut short in surprise. He knew Deku was soft, but honestly he thought Deku had the hots for her, and he couldn't blame him, but his jealousy would make him bitter. Bakugo looked to his side, cutting off eye contact. Yeah, I like her, he admitted, only not fully the truth. It was more than that. Not that he would tell Deku of all people. Bakugo could keep a secret, but he didn't believe Deku could, considering he told him back in their early year about All Might. Phew, good. Ida will be much harder to convince, Deku cheekily mentioned as he was relieved hearing Katsuki's words. Convince? Bakugo barked. He wasn't about to let some four eyes talk him down with the if you hurt her bullshit. The only time he wanted to hurt her was in a match, otherwise it would only be disrespectful and she'd definitely kick his ass. Deku had already made his way up the steps, so Katsuki sneered at the idea of Ida, the class daddy of 1A, talking him down. Getting off the elevators and glancing by Kirishima's slight open door, he heard the alternative rock music coming from his room. He didn't want to admit, but he knew Kirishima enough to know when he was in a sour mood. He played that ear-bleeding shit to let the drama queen in him revel. Unlocking his door, an annoying itch scratched at his conscience. No, I'm not doing it. I've had a long day. No, he told himself. All right. Bakugo busted into his room, shutting his door and cutting off his music on his phone. The hell is up your ass, shitty hair? Kirishima laid face front on bed, his face stuffed into a pillow. He turned slowly and would have been surprised Bakugo seemed he almost cared in his violent way. I'm fine, the pouty redhead mumbled. Bakugo sneered. You look pathetic. What? Something happened at the whatever the hell agency you were at? No, Kirishima moped. Bakugo got tired of this. He pinched the bridge of his nose. He wasn't one of the girls, so he sure wasn't going to start running over there giving him a pep talk. All right. Bakugo yanked his ankle off the bed. You wanna whine about shit? Get downstairs and I'll kick the shit out of you. Bakugo, the muscle-back redhead groaned. Look, I know you're actually trying to be a friend in your own way, but I'm not in the mood. I'm sorry. Kirishima slowly felt the insecurity from his prior days creep in. He didn't need Bakugo, someone he looked up to, see him like this. Bakugo noticed his whole demeanor change. It was worse back when he doubted himself when he and the others had a secret mission they were on. Bakugo for once was more interested and nosy about a friend without it being about just grabbing intel. The hell do? I know the muscle freak wouldn't want me to call Ochako in here for help to understand him, but I don't know how to talk about these things. I don't even talk to myself about him. Is this about Pinky? Kirishima flushed by the question. Bakugo asked as if he cared, and hit the target. Due to his flustered expression and itchy motions, Bakugo realized he was correct. Not that I give a shit, but I can ask Ochako to talk to her or whatever. Bakugo managed to help in his own grievous way. Heh, Kiri scoffed. Thanks, but as a man I can't let you two do that. I can't have people always giving me a pep talk or doing me favors. If I want to be a damn good pro and a man, I have to work that out on my own. Bakugo felt pride inside him. Before, he probably would rolled his eyes and walked away not giving a damn, but he couldn't help but feel good knowing his best friend wasn't a pussy. Bakugo made it to his room and tossed his bag down and threw his key on the shelf. Looking over to his bed he'd fallen to, a small figure wearing a cheerleader uniform laid there. Bakugo dropped his jaw slightly. He cocked his brow. Well, about time you got here. Ochako bit her lip while grinning. What's this? He acted aloof and not all turned on. Just thought I'd drop by and give you cheer since you were so grumpy today. She teased as he walked over, towering over her. Her head was aligned at his hip bones. She couldn't help but raise up his shirt and get the caramel scent of his aroma, nipping at his chiseled skin. Fuck, he sighed out, resting a hand in her hair. Found no real effort to protest. Her fingers dug into the waistband of his pants and slowly pulled down, kissing down the way, springing his hard member out and gasping at the reminder of his massive size. She'd had this taste not long ago, but still just as nervous. Bakugo's view of his petite, curvy girlfriend beneath performing head would be his favorite image next to exploding an enemy. Kirishima punched his everlast bag repeatedly. The image of his feet not moving as Gigantomachia threatened civilians, and not just any, but Mina, angry that even though Mina never held it against him, he still wanted to prove himself. How could a man confess feelings to someone he couldn't protect? The bag that had been abused for half an hour finally collapsed on the floor. Kirishima huffed and panted as he realized, clenching his fists, he needed to see her. He didn't know what to say, but if he didn't, he was afraid of self-destructing. Yanking open his door and surprised the one he wanted to see was there. Hi, she spoke softly, her curly hair slightly damp from her shower. She wore the cutest night clothing. He couldn't help but adore her soft yellow onesie outfit, small straps and shorts with flurries on the seams. He became jealous over the girls getting to see how cute she was during sleepovers. What are you doing here? Kiri blushed and scratched his head from the head full of sweat. Well, Mina began to speak, and although she was always fearless, she couldn't find the bravery to speak freely. I guess I just wanted to see you. Could I come in before Aizawa-sensei calls? Or yeah. He stuttered but moved from the entry. He knew Mina seen his room before, but he was nervous thinking she'd think he was dorky. Oh, I see you've really shown that punching bag who's boss. She snickered. He pouted and felt embarrassed. If you came here to make fun of me. Come on, Kirishima. Her words correcting him. He spoke out from a sour place. He knew she wasn't trying to make fun of him, but it was hard to accept her bubbly attitude right now. He was in a bad spot and didn't know how to let anyone in. I'm sorry. About the other night too, he admitted, looking down. Her mouth slid open a little at his surprising apology. I didn't mean to make it sound like I wasn't happy to be with you. She didn't want to hear this. She didn't want to hear about him not liking her. She knew it was possible, but she just got done eating a carton of ice cream from feeling like crud. She didn't think taking another down was a good idea. I just never dated or anything before, and well, being your date was even more of a wreck. She looked up stunned. What do you mean? His cheeks were flustered as he found the words. Well, I think you're the coolest girl I've known. I mean, you're badass. She grinned and blushed. Not that you could tell. Really? Yeah. You're like. His words cut off by her pink lips finding his. The kiss was soft and quick. His eyes widened and never left hers. They both just stared for a moment, taking in this happened. Mama hoping she didn't make a mistake, and Kirishima trying to grasp if he didn't hallucinate this. Without any words being exchanged, they leaned into another kiss, more passionate. He ran his hand around her neck, pulling her closer. She held onto his biceps, blushing at feeling how strong he was. Slowly pulling away, the energy was warm and inviting. Neither hands departed from one another as their lips still grazed on one another's. Uraraka is trying to help Deku knit a scarf for his mother for her birthday. Buying her one seemed easier, but she always talked about wanting one handmade, so Deku would attempt to do his best. Uraraka was nice enough to help, even though it wasn't easy for her either. Home economics wasn't her speciality. Thankfully, she was always paired with Bakugo or Yaoyorozu, for those is how she passed. She smelt the familiar scent of burnt caramel and rich cologne. turning around and noticing Bakugo coming back from sparring with Kirishima and a beat-down Kaminari who collapsed on their couch. "Wait, are you guys knitting?" Kiri pulled a chair around to sit. "Yep, for Mrs. Midoriya," Ochako cheekily answered. "Making your mom a homemade scarf. That's so manly, Midoriya," Kiri exclaimed. "I should make my own mother one." "Aw, Kirishima, that's so cute," Ochako chuckled. Bakugo huffed, turning his nose up, deciding to walk toward the kitchen. Katsuki," Ochako called out. She hasn't really spoke his first name publicly much, but she knew calling him Bakugo would only damper their relationship, and look, she was happy with him and happy to show everyone the way she could call him by his given name. "You know, we aren't that good at this. Would you be okay to help us?" She knew he felt left out. He had wanted her to spar with him, but she chose to spend quality time with Deku instead, knowing he needed a hand. It's just knitting," he huffed, which actually translated, "Assure me you actually want me around. Please." She batted her brown eyes and he played stiff for a moment before he grumbled. "Fine," aggressively pulling out a chair. "I didn't think you were into this, Kaken," Deku surprisingly stated. "Shut up," he mumbled, grabbing sewing needles and yarn. He instructed Ochako how to use her fingers through the yarn and the others. She loved seeing how he didn't use any hostility toward Deku. She knew it was just his rough demeanor and he'd probably be that way with everyone. But she really wanted to see them both get along because they had so much in common and would be an amazing team. "Uraraka," Aizawa voiced out, popping by them unexpectedly. "Your parents are here," he informed. She was surprised. She usually got a text, but she had been busy in the last hour. Bakugo's hair on his neck arose at the words of her parents being present. Remembering the unfavorable words they exchanged one to another about him, Ochako sat the equipment down and apologizing for the intrusion before prancing off to the doorway and greeting them with a hug. Bakugo peeped over, noticing how bubbly her family was. How did he fit into a family like that? He was sharp-edged while they were soft and round. He would only damper their happy little circle. "Fuck," he gripes out loudly as the needle drew blood. Realizing he was loud enough for the Urarakas to hear, he glanced over, side-eyeing as they didn't give much longer than a second look before going back to their business. Deku and Kirishima both looked at one another as they understood the energy. "Bakugo, you know you could introduce yourself," Kiri brought up. He replied with nothing else. His expression wasn't as hard as he trained it to be, as he knew he wanted to. "Just saying, if my daughter was dating a what?" Bakugo growled. Kirishima cocked a brow. "A guy who had to be chained up when he won a whole festival," Kirishima shamelessly pointed out. "If I knew he was dating my daughter, I'd be sorely upset. But if he tried to show he wasn't the same jerk since then, it would help me accept it." Bakugo exhaled and clenched his jaw, grasping the equipment in his hand, wanting to self-destruct. "He's right, Kaken," Deku added, startling Bakugo. "You've come a long way. Uraraka sees that, and I think her parents would sleep better knowing that." "I think you would too." Bakugo narrowed his eyes on the table before looking back at the family. His grip loosened as he accepted it. He pulled out of the chair, and Kirishima and Midoriya both choked in their excitement as they watched Katsuki Bakugo, king of murder explosions, properly introduce himself to his girlfriend's parents. "Poor Kaminari. If he wasn't passed out on the couch, he'd probably video this," Kiri mumbles. Bakugo uttered softly as he approached the talkative family, the father looking his way, a little confused. Ochako was surprised. She didn't think Bakugo would actually introduce himself. She didn't want to force it. She wanted to wait till he was comfortable. She didn't know if he knew how they felt, but knew pushing never worked out so simply. He barely made out. "The boy who won the festival," her mother finished for him. "Nice to see you again. You really bulked up since then." She spoke as if she didn't have a disliking to him. Nonetheless, he appreciated the way she held it nicely for Ochako. "You can call me Katsuki." He spoke as his cheeks were flushed, slipping his hands in his pockets. "Why would we call you that?" her father asked, cocking a brow. "Well, because," he started out, knowingly a little nervous but wasn't about to chicken out. "He's my boyfriend," Ochako blurted. Her parents looked at her, swiftly turning their heads, stunned at the information. They never knew she was interested in a boy, let alone dating one. The one they were terrified of her being close to. He's your what?" her father upset. "I'm sorry. I know I should have told you, told us." "Ochako, how could you do something like that without even talking to us first, or better yet, be with someone who hurt you?" her father asked, conflicted. He wasn't being loud, but his tone was harsh enough. Her father was always gentle, and he wasn't scolding her, but knowing she had always been so close to them both, it did sting knowing they were hurt. "I am sorry." She looked down the guilt-ridden inside. Bakugo hated this image. His parents' mother would throw him out the window if she knew he was dating without telling her, but he didn't give a shit about that. But Ochako does. Bakugo stood in front of her as if the words wouldn't have scarred her that way. "She wasn't trying to keep it from you. This is on me. So stop." Bakugo held back his cursing as much as possible. "Please stop being upset with her. I know you hate me for the festival and that's fine, but if I would have let her win, it'd be more disgraceful for her. I gave hell because she nearly had me and I wasn't going to let anyone hold that over me. Bakugo's brave words cradled Achako's heart. She blushed and warmth covered her. She held on the back of his shirt where his sweat still stained the fabric and leaned in. Her mother seemed a little sad still, but her father pinched the bridge of his nose. Aizawa had walked by being alerted by a student that a parent and student were arguing. What's the problem? Bakugo, what are you doing to the Urarakas? He looked down. Of course, it's my fault. Nothing, her mother spoke, surprising Bakugo, Achako and even her husband. I'm sorry, she continued. We just had a misunderstanding. If it's okay, we'd like to continue conversing about my daughter's new relationship. Her mother bravely worded as the words felt sour. Will that bring problems, Bakugo? Aizawa glared. No, he scowled. He knew he was a ticking time bomb, but being treated like one was a bitch. They stepped out on the porch. Bakugo stood crossing his arms, as Achako's dad leaned against the column glaring at him like he'd done a great evil to him in the past life. Achako's mother took Achako to the far side to speak directly. Honey, I want you to know I'm still your mom. It's just really surprising, you know. I mean, it wasn't long ago we stopped by to warn you of him and now you guys are dating. I know it's scary to you guys, and trust me, it was crazy to me too at first. But Katsuki, he's so loving. Really, I know he's like a jerk-off to most, but I think he's come a far way. I mean, the old Bakugo would have never introduced himself. Her mother nods. So, are you happy then? Does he not, like, hit you or push you around? No, of course not, Achako stated confidently. He tries to help me become a better hero too. It's not related, but just now he was teaching us to knit. Achako knew it wasn't the full truth, but half of it technically was. Achako's mother cocked brow. Well, that's kind of surprising. She snorted, looking over at the buff scowling blonde being scowled at by the bigger blonde. You know, I guess I can't be too hypocritical. Bakugo pinched the bridge of his nose. Fine, you'll wanna hit me, don't you? Her father cocked a brow, not moving. Don't play dumb, old man. I know you want to break something of mine. Her father scoffed. What I don't want to be broke is that girl's heart. He leveled. She's got the heart of the sun, and I know no matter how hardworking and strong she is, if someone breaks her heart, she'd take it hard. You won't understand it, but I hope one day you do. I'm never not going to be scared for her. It's impossible as a parent, whether it's you or the next guy. Her father's words stung him. Yeah, they're 17. But still, it doesn't mean they're destined to split one day. Bakugo wasn't planning ahead, but now it only burdened his heart. So, I'll give you a chance. I'll be watching to make sure my daughter is happy. TCH, you think I'm gonna jump in circles for you? Bakugo mocked. Not for me. His words stalled his mimic. You don't have to do any tricks. Just show her respect and how you truly feel. As much as I don't want to say it, I do agree with her. You got it takes to ensure a safe world. And I think a guy who could beat my Achako in a fight but also could introduce himself as her boyfriend is pretty gutsy. He spoke lastly, surprising Bakugo. He didn't think he'd end this spat with her father actually complimenting him. As her parents had left, she walked up to him on the porch as the sun was going down. So, she crossed her arms. Thanks for sticking up for me. Yeah, well, sliding his hands in his pockets. I like to be the only one that yells at you. She grinned and blushed. He was a sucker for it as she rose on her tippy toes and kissed his lips softly as he leant into her, following her. So when am I gonna meet your mom? She bounced. He expanded his eyes as the thought of his mother meeting Achako. Hopefully never. He grumbled. Katsuki, she whines. He grumbled. Not happening, cheeks. Okay. She pouted and sulked while walking away. He gritted his teeth, digging his fingers into his biceps. Fine. Walking to yank open the front door. Yeah. Achako clapped, bouncing. I'm so nervous. Achako's jittered at the front door of the Bakugo's. She wore a blue jean skirt, tights, and a white sweater, hair in a nicely messy ponytail. She had fretted it wasn't a great look and if she had time to redo it. Don't be. I plan on this to go quick. He mumbled in his khaki shorts and black skull shirt. The door swung open and a broad woman who was Katsuki with huge breasts stood in the doorway. Come in. Mitsuki held out for Achako's hand gently. Achako walking in and Bakugo slumping after her. I'm so glad my son finally got himself someone so cute. And no, I'm really glad it's you. His father and I enjoyed watching him break a sweat during the festival. Didn't we, dear? Before Masaru couldn't answer, she laughed. See, heh. Achako nervously chuckled. Well, I wouldn't say that really. Please, you know he's scared or angry when he's got that constipated look on his face. Ew, like the one he's using right now. She pointed at him. Shut up. He growled, scowling hard. Don't think about using your quirk, Katsuki. She growled back. I just redone this place and I don't need you ruining it. She warned. Achako looked between them both. His mother so young, if she didn't have such a mature body she'd think Mitsuki was her age. Now, if you would like to show Achako you're not a complete mess, you'd set the table so I can prepare it for our dinner. Bakugo griped, clenching his fists tightly to his sides. Ochako raised her hands nervously to keep him from self-destructing. The night didn't go as bad. Masaru was an awesome cook, and Ochako was glad to see he didn't take completely just from his mother. And Mitsuki shared cute stories of Bakugo, knowing he didn't like it, but she was glad to see it. He was a cute kid, but she did realize this cute kid also tormented Deku a lot, something she was still working on to fix. Bakugo laid in Uraraka's room that night, cradled by her side, holding her hand, kissing her wrist slowly. She felt safe and small in his embrace. "Thanks for letting me meet them," she mentioned. "Whatever," he mumbles, continuing to kiss down her arm. "I mean it. I liked it. It was fun seeing you and your mom go at it. Although I would worry if it gets worse sometimes. Baby," he spoke, sending a wave of heat down her body at the pet name. "I don't want to talk about the hag when I'm trying to fuck you." She nodded, left speechless as he used his moment to grasp her lips in a hot kiss, towering over her and finding her neck to kiss, rubbing against her to feel how hard he already was. Until, they halted as they both slowly looked at one another. Bakugo griped the pillows beneath her. "Fucking shitty hair." "Your room?" she asked. He nodded as they continued to finish the night in his room, where disturbing curse sounds wouldn't keep them from the same activity. Bakugo walking to class as Kirishima slugged beside him. "Damn, I didn't get any sleep last night." Bakugo sneered. "Shut the fuck up." "What?" Kiri furrowed his brows, confused. "TCH. You know you and Pinky are some real dumbasses." Rolling his eyes as he took his seat, Kirishima stupefied at the words of his best friend. It's not new. Bakugo was grumpy, but why the need of those words exactly? Mina walked, winking at the redhead, making him blush. Then it hit him. "Oh." He pointed to Bakugo, then blushed madly with a terrifying knowledge. "Oh." Kirishima didn't realize their walls were that thin. He never really heard Bakugo in Uraraka. Then again, he was usually listening to his music in his room, and he did assume Bakugo was always grunting due to working out. During lunch, Kirishima had to face his best friend, sitting his tray beside him and nervously trying to make small talk. "So, my mom loved the scarf." "Cut it out," Bakugo mumbled, eating a chip. Kiri sighed in defeat. "Sorry, dude. I didn't realize you guys could hear that. I guess Mina is a little loud." Kiri apologized, rubbing his neck. "What bitch isn't?" Bakugo cocked a brow. "Heh, yeah. You know, Bakugo, I gotta tell ya, calling your girl a bitch isn't manly or even okay." Kiri had to speak up. Bakugo smirked, knowing if only Kiri knew what a little freak his Ochako was and how much she liked being called names in bed. Kirishima shrugged and let it go. He was Bakugo, and you had to take all of him if you wanted to be his friend. "Well, anyway, if you ever need any relationship advice, I'm here for ya. You know, the only reason you two are together are because of me allowing you both to be present on my and Ochako's date, right?" Bakugo scoffed. "Well, yeah, but really I think I'm more romantic than you are." Bakugo furrowed his brows. "What? Come on, Bekabro. You know it's the truth." He nudged. "You've been seeing Pinky for a total of 30 seconds now, and you think you can lecture me about romance?" Bakugo mocked. "I mean, I guess you have a point, but oh really, ask Mina, she'll tell you." "Ask Ochako," Bakugo added. They both immediately found the girls' table alarming both. "Ochako, tell this dumbass how much of a romantic I am." "Mina, please let Bakugo know I am definitely more sentimental in that area." Kirishima wrapped an arm around her. Ochako and Mina both looked at each other. "Oi, why aren't you telling him what an amazing boyfriend I am?" Bakugo groaned. "Yeah, why are you stuttering too?" Mina was nudged. "You are. It's just," Ochako began. "You guys aren't really known for it. It's definitely us who are the ones keeping the romance on fire." Mina finished for her. "Are you serious?" Kirishima upset. Bakugo mocked. "Huh, told you. She's talking about you too, cat. You guys are great, but without us you'd probably still be single and miserable." Ochako shrugged. Bakugo grumbled and growled and let his fist slam onto the table. Kirishima pouted and crossed his arms. "But," Mina began, "I wonder if you were to compete, which would win?" Mina tapped her chin. Ochako grinned. Good point. Huh, as if, shitty hair. Bakugo, you'd be no match for me when it comes to this. Romance takes gentleness, and taking time to show a woman what she means." Soothing Mina's ear. "It also means having your woman pulling some of your hair out during the best orgasm she'll ever have." Squeezing Ochako's thigh. Ochako blushed and hid her face. "Katsuki," he smirked, feeding off her reaction. "Enough." Mina clapped her hands. "I'll tell you boys what. Us girls are having a sleepover tonight in the common area. No boys allowed. During that time you will have to write a poem and we'll both deem who is most romantic." "Ooh, I like this." Ochako bounced with excitement. "TCH. Asia," Bakugo exclaimed without giving it a thought of writing it. "Practically got it all wrote down in my heart already." Kiri kisses Mina's cheek. "Awa." Mina cuddled into his embrace. "In the meantime, you boys could also be a little more gentlemanlike, such as holding open doors, telling us we're pretty, carrying our books." "Enough, dumbass." Bakugo grumbled as Ochako elbows him. Ochako snickered as they left the table. Have I told you what a brilliant scheme artist you are? Not lately. Mina winked. It'll be fun to watch them dance a little. Plus, they could work on their sensitive sides. As much as Ijiro likes to think he's a softie, he's more rough with me than he thinks. By the way, Ochako mentions, what was he doing for you to be screaming like that? Oh, Mina blushed and felt a tad on the spot. Well, Ijiro is a great lover, but the man is like a rabid animal when eats me out. I mean, he's doing a good job, but damn, I can feel your teeth, you know. She whines. Wow, I didn't want to say anything because it would be rude, but I did wonder about his teeth and how it would work. It's really not hard actually. We practiced a few times and thankfully I have no cuts. She thanked the gods. How is Bakugo like? Mina nudged. The same really. He actually prefers me sitting on his face usually, which is annoying because I always feel like I'm gonna crush him. Trust me, I think if anything, Bakugo would want to go that way. Mina joked. Ochako snickered. She wasn't wrong. Bakugo loved her body and wasn't shy about it. Anyone with a 4? Toru asks, holding a deck. Sue hands over her card. Thank you. Toru adds it to her collection. Anyone with a queen? Mina asks, looking left to right dramatically. Momo holds her card out. Much love, Momo. Mina paired her cards. Ochako, your turn. Mina sang. Ochako was in La La Land as she was in a daze. Mina whistled, throwing popcorn at her friend. Huh, the brunette bounced. Oh, sorry, a 9. What's got you into space? Jiru asked, cocking a brow. Oh, just wondering when our food will be done. Ochako quickly came up with. You really are a foodie? Huh. Sue adores. I think they should be about done now. Momo adds, standing up, prancing off to the kitchen, and Jiru walking after. You're nervous. Mina pokes. Ochako blushes. Not true, I swear. Ochako blushed and hid her cheeks with her cards. It's okay, Choco Chip. I'm sure they'll both amuse us equally. Mina winked. Are you two discussing about both Kirishima and Bakugo writing poems? Hiro. Sue asks. I guess I just wonder if Bakugo is actually trying. Or if he isn't trying to find something on the internet. Ochako rested in her palm. Oh, come on. Bakugo is many things, but a cheater he isn't. Mina defended. Yeah, he's too proud, I guess. Ochako blushed. She wouldn't care if it was 2 sentences or a 2-page poem. The fact the class feisty gremlin was writing a poem for her meant more to her than anything. Gotta say, the way they both fought to open the door first was hilarious. Toru chuckled. The way you can wind them up like toys and watch them go will always be a fun sight. Mina cheekily snickered as she drank her fruity shake. Move out of the way, shitty hair. Bakugo groaned out, pushing him out of the way to hold the door open for Ochako. Bakugo, that's not fair. Mina's right beside her. Kirishima groaned as his quirk flexed. Too bad. Walking behind them both. Of course, Kirishima got the upper hand when he made it to the door after the class rang. Are you in a hurry, Kirishima? Aizawa's red eyes glowed and his hair swung back. And no, Aizawa-sensei. Kirishima collected his quick stance. Bakugo growled at him as he moved past him. The day continuing in the challenge of opening doors and umbrella holding. Kirishima sitting at his desk as he contemplated on the right words. Wrinkled up paper balls around his chair. What kind of man can't express his love for his own woman? He groaned. To be fair, Bakugo not Kirishima were in touch with their feminine side. It's not their fault entirely. They just never happened to try. Bakugo's attempts all turned to ash as he knew how dumb they sound. He had told himself repeatedly Ochako likes him the way he was. But knowing this was a challenge, he couldn't help but feel if he didn't give his damn best, it was showing a piss-poor example of the man he was. He needed to go for a jog to clear his head from wondering if Kirishima was besting him. On the way down, bumping into Midoriya and Ioma, grumbling as they greeted him. You okay, Kaken? Deku asks. It would be best to not bump into the girls downstairs. They've sworn off any males to enter in the common area. A tragedy. I make the best face masks. Aoyama dramatically pouted. To ch. Bakugo replied, rolling his eyes, wondering if Ochako is expecting something really good. I heard you and Kirishima were writing poems for both Uraraka and Mina. How is that coming? Deku consists. Why? Bakugo swiftly turned around. Think I can't? No. The green-haired became red and nervous. I just meant it doesn't seem easy. Kirishima may actually have a good chance though. Deku thought aloud as he continued to brainstorm. Bakugo sneered. Not that you wouldn't. Deku immediately added. Why would I want to write all this junk down anyway? It's not like she'd just leave. Bakugo brought up, but there was a small change of soreness in his tone. Like he was asking. Deku understood Bakugo was excellent in everything he did, but there were things he hadn't no clue how to perfect. Ioma, you could probably give him some pointers. Deku nudged. Moi. The feminine blonde places his hand over his chest. I suppose. To ch. Bakugo rolled his eyes. I didn't say I needed it. Pouting as he crossed his arms. Suit yourself, monsieur. Bakugo clenched his biceps tight. He wouldn't. He didn't need help. He was Katsuki. People needed him, not the other way around. As the boys left the elevator, Bakugo managed to speak as he refrained from calling him his usual unlikable nickname. Boy, he stood there still pouty. What kind of tips? Deku was actually relieved. He knew Uraraka made him happy as he did her. 'Tis a lot to take in. You and Midoriya should swing by my room. I'll serve you the finest as we go over the list. Bakugo groaned and not able to protest, and the pair left. Deku didn't sign up for this, but he was the one who initiated it, so it was fair. Bakugo arrived to the room and saw a platter of mask scrub and hair bands. The fuck is this? Appropriate attire for our eventful evening, Aoyama informed as he gestured for him to take a spot. After Bakugo got comfortable, another knock came to the door, and Bakugo, too careless to give a glance, hears Kirishima's voice. He scowled as he saw his opponent enter the same room. The hell you doing, shitty hair? Bakugo, Kiri stupefied and cocked a brow. Oh, Kirishima texted me and asked if I was any good with poems. I told him what we were doing and invited him, Izuku informed. Bakugo sneered. Trying to cheat, huh? How is asking for help cheating? Plus, you're here too, the angsty redhead replied. Bakugo growled and huffed as he sat back pouting. With an hour in, Aoyama prepped their faces with green mush, and they watched iconic chick flicks. As they watched Ali and Noah grow old together on one of the most tear-jerking romantic movies ever, Aoyama, Deku, and Kirishima were holding back a tear as Bakugo narrows only his eyes on the screen, thinking Noah was ridiculous for still wanting her, thinking she was ridiculous to leave a suitable guy for Noah. But as the movie ended and seeing the pair have a family and grew old together, he grew envious. Imagining someone loving you despite all the cracks and flaws wasn't given to everyone. It was something special, even he acknowledged. He began to sink into the firm fact he knew he could only see that with Ochako. He knew it was a big world, but Ochako hit home. She got him, even when he was an ass to her. As the girls watched a continuous marathon of The Bachelorette, Ochako couldn't help but just wish she was with Katsuki. She saw all the suitable men on the show, sophisticated, high manners, and dressed like their jobs depended on it. Yet they still didn't come close to him. He was rude. He wore baggy clothing unless he got bigger and filled them out. He said what was on his mind even if it was vulgar. But she loved it. He was driven. He was carefree, and his vulgarity was honestly funny at times. Sure, it was bad for publicity, but maybe it would be something people would like him for. Bakugo waited for her sleepover to end, using his brass knuckles as a time killer as he broke already 2 of them. He always had to keep extra in his closet due to his anger getting the best of him. Only this time it wasn't anger. It was anxiety. He couldn't handle that. He'd hyperventilate as his brain would swirl. He mediated on Genist words. Learned to count and breathe. He heard a small knock. Katsuki. His heart lit up and his stomach knotted. She was here. Come in. He spoke, tossing the device on the desk. Looking over at her, and she wore her hair down with long baggy night pants and her lovable bear hoodie. He blushed as he seen her this way, appreciating it was only him who got to have her, not wanting to think about if that were ever in danger of breaking. She ran hopping onto him, immediately wrapping her short legs around him, kissing him. He was startled as he hummed in the kiss but held her anyhow. What's up with you? He asked in a rough tone. She giggled. I don't know. She blushed. A certain aura changing around her, he noticed. I missed you, I guess. Missed me. He curled his brows as he was confused by the affection, but it didn't hide the blush on his ears. She giggled as she noticed. I just think I'm getting a little spoiled with you is all. Running her fingers around the ends of his hair. Spoiled? He asked as his expression grew curious and soft. Yeah, I think I like how you hold me, and even when you aren't. I just like being around you. Bakugo glared into her brown round eyes, knowing exactly why Noah went through all that just for one girl. Bakugo kissed her passionately, letting his lips swiftly become one with hers. He held her in his arms. She cuddled into his chest, and his body heat kept her and her hoodie warm. They fell asleep without even so much as reading the poem. As Ochako woke, Bakugo wasn't there, as she knew he most likely went on his morning run. Sometimes she wished he'd wake her to go with him, but decided a lazy sleep and was better suited for her. As she got to her room, a letter laid on her bed. She goes to open it and reads what she had not expected to actually gaze upon. Round face. I know this isn't exactly a poem, but I'm not great at it. Instead of finding words to rhyme with this sappy shit, I'm just gonna tell you how I feel, because I think if it falls from my tongue I might puke. Before I say it, I want you to know it doesn't mean I'm your fucking slave. You don't get to use those big doe eyes at me and get what you want. But I'm in love with you. Don't tell me you love me back till you mean it, or I'll kick your perfect ass. Also, if anyone sees this, I'll kill you. Ochako's stomach and chest fluttered as she read this. She could barely finish it as she felt her breath trying to catch up. Was he screwing with her? Did he mean it? Bakugo wasn't a liar, and he didn't say things to make himself look better. She lied on her bed with the note in her hand, continuously looking at it to make sure it was real. She didn't fall asleep and dream Katsuki confessed his love for her. She found her gym clothes and made her way to the gym, knowing he'd be there if he still wasn't in his room. Opening the gym door and seeing only one man here. Of course, he was predictable at times, lifting as he lied on the bench. She sat across his lap. He jolted up with a snarling scowl till he seen it was her. "Fucko, the hell is wrong with you, moonface?" he gruffly worded as he continued to lift. "Katsuki." She laid her hands on his torso that flexed under her. She knew better than to lie. She also knew better than to let a man tell her what to say and when to. But she wasn't going against it. She knew she felt the same. "I love you too." He halted and his sweaty neck has turned red. He clenched the weight and placed it on the bar, slightly pushing her off as he rose up to find something else. "The hell I say?" he asked, annoyed. "Don't say shit you don't mean." "Hey, you don't get to decide how I feel." She furrowed her brows and cried out. "Boy, don't go screaming." He yelled back. "I told you I'd kick your ass if you did it." He scowled. "Yeah." She picked a weight big enough to crush her if she didn't use her quirk and threw it. He activated his quirk and blew the weight before it reached him. "You little bitch." He gritted through his teeth before plunging toward her. Things like this excited him when she got witty. With her body embraced by him and slammed down, she grunted but quickly rolled over to trap his upper body into a lock, pulling his right arm. "Why can't you just accept it?" "Because it's horse shit." He yanked her hair down with his other arm, pinning her chest down with his knee and pinned both arms above her head. "And it's not when you say it. I couldn't even say it in front of you. Why would you want to tell me you love me back if I can't even say it?" His vermilion eyes seemed anxious as he cried that out. She understood it wasn't because he thought her as a liar, but he couldn't understand why she wouldn't even if she did. Her straining went soft as his hold stood firm. "Katsuki." Her fingers grazed his palm. He gawked into her brown eyes. "Not a slave, my ass," he thought. "If you love me, then say it." He could. He knew he could, but he felt like he was abandoning a part of himself behind if he did. Taking all she'd give him, worried he'd not want another thing if he had her. She looked disappointed, like the letter was just for fun, for a bet. She looked to the side, ignoring his anxious gaze. "Wait, Achako." He recognized her expression, her look of needing to separate herself, like she wasn't wanted. He wanted her and he wanted to be number one. But this was all still scary for him, but he'd never want to lose her. Seeing her push from his grasp and walking away, he saw himself as Noah if he never had Allie. Growing old alone. Not just alone, but without her. Fuck anything else. Blasting as he moved closer to her to keep her from walking out those doors. She halted, furrowing her brows. "Move," she softly ordered him. "I can't." She noticed the window above the doors open as she held her breath, making both cheeks bloat and hands linking. "Damn it, woman. I'm trying to tell you I love you." Bakugo groaned, agitated. She halted her, floating as she tipped upside down. Hearing him say it, with his own lips, made all the difference. He glared at her, pulling her down for his forehead to graze against hers. "Please don't say it unless you love me too. You'll only piss me off." He spoke nonchalantly as his words didn't match his tone. She scoffed, aligning their faces to look at one another. "I love you, Katsuki." Their lips finding each other's sweetly as she still levitated above him. Hearing a cough clearing itself behind them as they pulled away. "Aizawa-sensei," Achako screeched. He exhaled, aggravated, pinching the bridge of his nose. 2 weeks, cleaning duty. He spoke before leaving. "It was my doing, old man." Bakugo sneered. "I was only talking to you, Bakugo." Mr. Aizawa corrected him as Bakugo, even though getting what he wanted, growled at his blunt response. Achako managed to do it. She managed to get her best friend and boyfriend get along. Well, more so make her boyfriend get along with her best friend. It was her birthday, as the class rounded about with presents. Deku and Bakugo being in charge of food, as Bakugo didn't gripe once about it. She couldn't say they were best friends, but Bakugo had come a long way with everyone, even Deku. As the night ended, she was cradled into her boyfriend's arms as he placed a streaming platform on his television. "What are we watching?" she asked, snuggled into his arm. "The Notebook."